Councilwoman Garvey?
Present.
Councilman Brennan?
I know he is here.
Just trying to get him, but he's not in there.
He's outside.
Councilman McCain?
Present.
Councilman Stokes?
Present.
Mayor Sykes?
Present. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum for the Monday, April 25th, 2022 meeting at 6 p.m. Run down to department head comments. We're going to start with...
They're in there.
All right, hey, come on in, one at a time. Who's up first? Gene, come on in.
We are currently doing a whole bunch of patching. That's what you're going to see, a lot of cones and stuff around town. We're just picking up all the loose ends, all the different things that have happened throughout winter. So
Can't hear you, sir.
Can't hear you. Can't hear me? Sorry. We are doing a bunch of road patches. So what you're going to be seeing for the next couple weeks is pretty much solid truckloads. So if you're seeing cones, candles, and stuff like that, just be aware. There's guys out on the road. There's a pretty good sized crew moving around. So that's our biggest thing. We got road sweepers and other stuff going on too right now, but that's the biggest thing.
Thanks, Gene. All right, Shirley, you're up.
We've started farming, so that's
Speak
pretty
up.
much where all our efforts.
Speak up. They can't hear at the back.
All our efforts are going into farming at the moment, getting that up and running. So that's about it.
Okay. You gotta speak up for everyone.
Oh, I have to speak up? Okay. So this week we have the Arbor Day celebration on Friday. It's a drive-through event. Anybody that wants a new seedling, you have 8 varieties to pick from, and you get 2 seedlings. So just drive on through right in front of the Parks and Rec office if you'd like some seedlings. We have the Purple Up dance party because we're still celebrating the month of the military child, and that's going to be, it's a free event. It's at our Recreation Activity Center from 6:30 to 8:30 on Friday. And our softball t-ball deadline is this Friday as well. So Friday is a busy day for us. And the parks guys, they're out mowing, finishing up a lot of projects, and just working hard. Okay.
Thank you. Really quick, the electrician for the amphitheater was there. They're just piping that all up, getting that ready to rock and roll. So the amphitheater should be done sooner than later.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Hank.
Can you make it before I join the meeting?
Oh,
Roll call.
Yep, sorry. Hey, let the record reflect that Councilman Brennan is present. Sorry.
It's okay.
CVH is going. They're about the biggest show in town right now, putting down foundations, getting houses up. Ace Hardware started today. Out there, you see the fencing up. Done with Taco Bell plans, so they're ready for them to figure that permit. And then we're getting ready for the weed season. Obviously, we've got a part-time code enforcement guy coming in here. So that's about it.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Hank.
Hey Mayor, City Council. I had the opportunity this last week to go meet with some other economic developers, go to a training. I can tell you that everyone is experiencing the same amount of growth, the same amount of issues. I can tell you that they were really impressed with what we've done so far. I don't really have anything new for you, so feel free to come to my office if you have any questions.
Thanks, Park. Chief.
Mayor, Council, just some things here, just briefly. Departmentally, we finished our BLM wildland stuff. This last portion, the bookwork stuff, we've got our 3-mile walk and things like that to get that completed in the department. We'll be through that. Then we'll be moving everybody into, particularly people into the wildland, into the brush trucks and that sort of thing. So a lot of work yet to do on that before summer strikes. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I'll be gone for the Chiefs Conference from the 28th and return on the 1st. And the last thing, kind of an interesting thing, I attended a meeting over in Meridian. It's a meeting that's held monthly that I'll start attending regularly, and that's consists of fire marshals and fire chiefs. It's kind of come if you'd like to come, but it's very informative to sit down there and find out kind of what people have got going and how they're dealing with the various things. Fire codes and things like that they're pertaining to, so all over the valley. So there's a fire marshal that comes from Twin Falls, so very informative meeting, so I'll be attending that on a regular basis.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a good turnout at the Chess Club open house today, and watch out for upcoming playtimes soon. Tomorrow night is our game night. The library has a large assortment of games for various ages, so we'll have snacks to munch on and beverages, so come play. Thursday we have local business Computer Works doing a computer skills workshop from 5 to 7, free to the public. Friday at noon we have our knitting group. That's for anyone that wants to learn how to knit or crochet. On Friday we also have our celebration, Day of the Child celebration from 3:30 to 5:30. We'll have STEM activities and include a local performance by our Echo dancers. Later that night, just as Darcy said, we'll have our Celebrate Month of the Military Child with our Purple Up. So we'll have dancing, live music with local band, Real Rock, snacks, and purple swag. So come dress up in purple. And then if you don't want to come dance, the library also has the Mountain Home Arts Council, their spring coffee house with Rick Ardener with the Limberlost Press. He's going to have a presentation for free. There'll be light snacks and beverages from 7 to 9 that night. Wednesday, May 4th, we have also a fascinating look at Civil War prisons, describing how they worked in both sides, and also include a Civil War letter that was written by our host's ancestors 2 weeks before his capture. And we'll also have a discussion about doing genealogy family history classes as well. And then May 6th and 7th, we'll have our 12th annual spring art show with the Visual Arts Guild, along with the Friends of the Library having a book sale. And then we'll also have our applications taken for library specialists for part-time help until the end of this week. So Friday is the last day to turn those applications in.
Hey, Shasta, my keys are in my desk if you're going to take off. Or on top. You can grab them if you want.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is that all of them? Chief?
Darcy's in there.
No, she already went.
Okay.
Chief?
Okay, we got several things going on. We're doing Denim Days on Wednesday, so we'll have some t-shirts and jeans on Wednesday for the victims of sexual assault awareness deal. We're going through our sergeant's promotional process now. We'll have a written examination for some corporals. We'll do that on Wednesday. We did have open testing Saturday, this past Saturday. Got one very good candidate out of that testing process, so we'll get him some application and background paperwork and kind of move forward with that. We do have one that's in the field training officer program right now and doing a good job. He's one that graduated from the academy recently, so hoping to have him released on his own here in about 3 months, 3.5 months, and we have one other in background. So if everything works out well, we should have a list of one eligible for pending retirement June 20th. So aside from that, I'll be in the Chiefs Conference in Sun Valley Monday, Tuesday next week, so I'll be out of the office going up there and checking that out.
Yeah. Rich?
Mayor, Council, I did supply a few samples, so I gave you some of the monthly water data, if that was been for March. So new construction, my data is a little bit different than what you get with the building department because they do the building permits off of a year and mine go off of the fiscal year because I try to keep track of how much is coming into availability funds each year for that. So so just a little bit if they look different than what you've seen. But on that you can see we're about 3 single family homes ahead of last year where we were as about this time. So just kind of going through that. Also kind of how I kind of keep track of things. If you I gave you kind of these are things that have been approved by you guys. And so you can see that how much EDUs are for each of those, and then as building permits come, that's when the other side gets added to those, kind of what's going on. So you can see that we have about 1,462 EDUs permitted, but we've only used we only have 114 of them that actually have a building permit that are out. So that's kind of how that works, and so I'll kind of keep that updated with these are going along. So. Perfect. Just kind of some questions you had with those from last time.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. Which on this, I didn't actually know it was in my box till right now, so just a quick review. The blue line at the bottom says E's remaining.
Yep.
1664.
So
Is that before all of the permitted numbers over here, 1421?
So if you were to add, I think the 1778 up on the top, the available way up on top.
Okay.
Oh, I have to think how that goes. So, so what you've permitted is that 1442 or 1462, the one that's the yellow line.
Okay, got it.
So that would leave 316 out of that number up above, out of the 1778.
Okay.
But when we look at what we really have, I mean, that's just been what's permitted, but we've only used, out of those 1462, we've only have 114 of them that we're using. So our plans are, I mean, what we're projecting for growth is, between 100 and 150 and 200 building permits per year. So, I mean, to get to that number, that's kind of where we are with that. So we still have, what we've permitted, we still are okay, If that makes sense for what we're doing. We're not going to get, 1,600 building permits tomorrow. So it's going to be basically probably over,
5-6 years.
6 years. So
This does not include the new well.
this is not with the new well in. So when we put the new well in, we're hoping to add another 1,500 on top of that, so. Yep. Councilman, did that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Safransky?
Just working on the budget.
Yep.
We asked for the bids for the pool last Thursday to be submitted. We unfortunately did not receive any bids for the pool. That seems to kind of be the trend right now. The turnaround isn't long enough, I suppose. So we got on the phone with EKC, who is the estimator, when we submitted for the Land and Water Conservation Grant. For the project, they put a lot of time and effort into getting us the estimates of what our project total would be, so when we submitted for our grant documents, we'd have good firm numbers. They this morning were very positive. They want to work with us. We would like to work with them. Now that the bidding process is closed, we kind of can pick who we want to, as long as they come in under our expected bid, our budgeted number, which they know that we're on a tight budget. So we were hoping to have that turnaround and get that to you guys by our May 9th meeting so we can start moving dirt. It's looking like, to firm up the numbers from subs and different contractors, that it will be more realistically probably the May 23rd meeting, but it will come in with like firm numbers on what the subs will charge to construct the pool and the new pump house. And then they would like to push dirt that first part of June. And that's what they're pushing for, is the subs to get in and get the work done. So that's where we're at on the pool, so. And that's all I got, other than, does May 4th work for the 2 members of council over here to do work session?
Gonna have to look.
Doesn't matter.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
Can you let me know by tomorrow so
Yeah.
I can send out the info? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, council, just kind of piggybacking off what Tiffany said right there with bids. If you did notice on the bottom for our construction stuff for this summer, we do have the well 17 bid opening. It's going to be advertised this Wednesday in the Statesman, the Mount Hope News, and next Wednesday. And then same thing with College Park, and the bid openings on those are on May 12th, so basically 3 weeks. One thing we've been hearing from a few different of our engineers, that Nampa had a big bid for a construction project, kind of like our College Park one, and they had no bids that came in either. So it's just the kind of that environment of being able to get the materials that you need, being able to get people hired that you need, and so just kind of a heads up that that wasn't just something that wasn't normal. It's kind of been happening a little bit with bids. So, and that's, I think, when we got our airport one that you're going to approve today, we were lucky probably to get one, and mostly because it was just bare ground. I mean, all they have to do is just clear off the ground and pave, and that's what that company does. So it's just kind of some things that didn't have to get a lot of material. So just kind of a heads up.
All right, council members, got any questions for any of the department heads? All right, hearing none, we're going to run down to presentation by the military liaison, Marty Chief Anderson, Chief, regarding Defense Community Infrastructure Program, better known as DSIP. Come in. Up front.
So, Mayor, council members, in order to deal with the increased housing and concerns for the infrastructure addressing the Water Well 17 at a cost of $5.8 million, we have an opportunity to utilize or apply for the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program grant. And what that grant is it's a grant that's authorized by Congress through the National Defense Authorization Act that funds $90 million to DoD through community investment programs. So $90 million has been set aside for all military communities to apply for. So what we have an opportunity is to apply for this grant. What is a $5.8 million is the total program or the total project cost, and so we can offset that by as much as 66%. So we could apply for the 5.8 at a matching funds cost of 30%. So if we put in $2 million towards that project, we can apply and save the community $4 million basically. So what I'm asking for is whether or not the council wants to approve the use of $2 million to apply for that total of $6 million to save the community money. And then that way the city can use that money for something else if we're awarded that grant. So,
Council members, any questions?
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan?
That, rough numbers, $2 million.
So, yeah, the project's 5.8. It's a requirement through DSIP to matching funds of 30%. So my recommendation would be $2 million. Now, you can apply more, which increases your the scoring factor, but because we're a rural community, that does take into play a little bit. So my recommendation as a minimum would be the $2 million to apply towards that grant to be competitive, because it is a highly competitive program.
And can we start the project without having the results of the grant? And if we're into it, $2 million already, then how would that work?
So the application goes in be July. The results will be known in September whether or not we receive that grant. So then that money would come to the city, and then we would, if we're awarded it, and then we could start the project. Now, we'd obviously, this is needed, so it's going to happen. So if we started it, great. It just shows that we're ready to start this project. So it actually behoove us, the more information or the further along the project is, more likely we'll get support on it.
I'm sorry. Will there be like a letter of commitment to show what we've done already to prepare ourselves for?
It would be part of the application process. Okay. Yes, I would put that in there, which I want to have, because again, it shows that you have to be able to start showing that you can move dirt within a 12-month period, and the total project would be completed in a 5-year period. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
Marty, this sounds like a good idea. Save Mountain Home taxpayer dollars, $4 million. I'm in support of that, especially goes towards a well. I was going to ask you, what's our success rate with DSIP grants? I know you've put in a few, haven't you?
This will be my third one. The first one we were successful on for the $427,000 for the schools. The second one we tried to do for the broadband, that was last year. We were highly competitive. I got great feedback on that. But again, they only award so many, and they only had 60 million. Congress approved an additional $15 million on top of the $75 million. So with that, and based on our need and how it's going to benefit not only the community but the installation, I think we're highly competitive. But it's a tough program. But again, we don't lose nothing either way. So it's just an opportunity.
Mayor.
Councilman McCain?
I'll agree with Councilman Stokes. I think this is a fantastic idea.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Garvey?
I make a motion that we approve for Chief Anderson, to go on and apply for the DSIP grant.
Second.
It's in our consent agenda.
Yeah, it's not.
Sorry.
No.
It's item D. It's D.
Oh, we're backwards. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I still approve.
I'll still second. As soon as we get there.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. Yeah.
That's all right.
I just wanted him to kind of get you a synopsis
yes,
of
yeah.
what he's doing and where he's at. So,
Yeah.
all right. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Mayor.
Council members. All All right, rundown to conflicts of interest. Any council member received information pertaining to or otherwise had any contact with any persons regarding any items on the city council agenda tonight? If so, please set forth nature and the said nature of the contact.
Mayor?
Councilman McCain?
I had one email that I did see that was in not support of the fiber, because they were under the impression that if they were inside that LID, they would have to take it, which you do not have to take it if you don't want to where, but that's the email that I received.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Councilman Brennan?
Over the last several months, I'd say I've received a lot of emails about the fiber project. And I don't think I can name them all, but mixed results. So, yes, there's been communication about the fiber project.
Roger that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
Same as Councilman Brennan.
Roger that.
Mr. Mayor? Same as the rest.
All right. Well, down to public hearing creation of fiber optics local improvement district number 1.
Okay. Before we open it, no duplicate testimonies, no yelling or rude behavior, no personal attacks, limit of 3 minutes for each person, and you cannot give your time to someone else. And if you're going to speak, please state your name and your address. And then you'll have to sign one of these sheets. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
Can we let the audience know that our wonderful chief of police is doing 3 minutes on the clock, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, would anybody like to get up for or against the creation of a LID? Come on. Come on down.
Afternoon. Is that right here?
Yep.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Caleb Lievsky. I live at 645 Southwest Raylan. And I am a beta tester for the new fiber optic internet on said street. And I have to say I am for the installation of the fiber optic across the city for a multitude of reasons. After I've been experiencing the fiber optic internet after the last, I believe we've had it for 3 weeks now, I have to say it is a drastic improvement on quality of life, and I would just like to say that, excuse me, lost me.
You're good.
Not used to public speaking, I apologize. But I'd like to talk about the importance of it. And one of my primary concerns of the fiber optic internet, from what I've seen coming into the city recently, is what I see as a monopoly between the current 2 internet service providers that are running the city. Now, both of these internet service providers, to my knowledge, which may be incorrect, buy out older internet service providers and do not install their own internet. So they exist solely off of old infrastructure. So in the case of Southwest Raylan Street, none of the internet service providers were willing to provide internet for the entire street, leaving a whole street of fully built houses in the dark, right? In the year of our Lord, 2022, that is a little bit difficult to deal with these days. And one of the concerns that I've seen is both with school, work. We've seen working remotely is extremely important, and we've seen that it is a proven method to work remotely after the COVID times, and simply recreationally. One of the things that I was really looking forward to with the fiber internet once it was installed was to get in contact with my brothers. I use the internet primarily for access to stay in contact with my brothers who live in Michigan. I was in Japan for the last 3 years prior to moving here on June 28th of last year, and I have to say it is my only primary method of staying in contact with them. And I have to say it is extremely wonderful to have that access once again. But moving away from the sentimental side of it, I would like to say how affordable these deals are with the fiber optic internet. Once we were able to look into the internet service providers that we could purchase our monthly plans from, we are now paying $8 a month for 1 gigabyte up and 1 gigabyte down, as compared to the $100 that we would be paying through alternative internet service providers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gil.
Like, thank you for your time.
Right, Mayor, council members, my name is Shane Stursick. I am also from 645 Raylan. So I am in favor of the fiber. One of the major things for me is that when we moved here, we have experienced 5 different services. We started with Zito at a house we were renting, then moved to, because we had no internet options on our street, we moved to mobile hotspots on our phones, hotspots from cell phone providers that weren't on our phones, Starlink internet, and then we finally got fiber, and this has been the best that we've been able to have so far, hands down. From a practical side, I'm in school, and I am a foreign language major. I had to stop my fall semester and spring semester because the courses I needed, the teacher only did remote. And the first 4 options for us, I couldn't do the Zoom calls because it would drop every couple seconds, every couple minutes. And as a foreign language major, it's impossible to talk and get conversations and get that practice in if I can't hear what they're saying and they can't hear what I'm saying. The other member of our household that couldn't be here has school that just started, thankfully, right after we got the internet, so he's good, but he also has therapy over Zoom and was unable to do that until we got the fiber going. So I don't see any downsides for at least our household in our street. Everything is connected to the internet. When we got our house, there was a big sticker from Hubble saying, "Congratulations on your house, you get a free smart home package, you just have to connect to the internet." It was taunting us since October, just above the light switch, and it was frustrating to see because, I mean, the house was just dead. We had electricity, but it felt like another of our major utilities was just gone. But now that we've had it, it's a completely different feeling in the house. Everybody's more relaxed. There's less anger because we can do the things that we are accustomed to, and it's just been probably the best thing that's happened to us, honestly, since we moved into our house. So that's it. I'll leave.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gary Ashby. I live at 1965 Southwest Shaft Avenue. I think I am one of the people that you got emails from. I wanted to come here not only to tell you that I'm firmly in favor of the LID, but also that I appreciate the mayor and the council having enough foresight to start planning for something like this, especially in the times we're in where there's lots of growth. And we have to determine what type of a community we want to be, whether we want to be simply a bedroom community where everybody commutes to Boise and really doesn't care much about the community, or where we want to have the infrastructure where we can pull in business and community to make it what could be a very great community. I came from a community that had fiber network. I lived there for almost 9 years. A couple years before I moved there, they developed a fiber network there. I can tell you in the almost 9 years I was there, we had no internet outages that whole entire time. It cost $50 a month, and it never went up once since it started. In fact, there was so much money generated from that that they started giving scholarships out to kids in the community. They didn't want to lower it because eventually they thought they were going to need to increase it, so they gave scholarships out instead. As a result of having internet, the fiber internet where you own your own line, we were able to have a regional hospital come into our community. We were able to have the biggest movie theater complex and the only one for several miles around, as well as several other retailers. if you want a community that's going to have great opportunities for their residents, you're going to need to consider that. I moved here to live by my family when COVID happened and I found out I could work from home. When I started working from home, I checked to make sure there was internet, but I had no idea what it was like to deal with a predatory monopolist. And I know some of you may be offended at me saying that, but that's exactly what the situation is that I have. I have never had decent internet since I've moved here. It's gone out sporadically all the time, but there have been times when it's been out for over a week, and it never once had anything to do with me. My internet went out when they put my neighbor's internet in, because I found out that with one line that goes to our neighborhood, they have 35 to 38 houses that feed off that line. If they mess up the thing they call provisions or mapping, then you get cut off and you can't get back on unless they do something with their computer system back in Pennsylvania. So we're basically controlled by an out-of-state Eastern company that doesn't really care what happens to us. They just want our money. So what happened is I begged and pleaded, and I'm almost out of time, and I have a lot of stories about this, unfortunately, but I begged and pleaded, and after asking for a supervisor, one finally called me in 3 days, and on the phone in 15 minutes she got it corrected, but I was without internet for a week. I want you all to know real quickly that my employer just told me that we don't have reliable internet, and I either have to move or I have to find it. So my situation is incredibly personal now. I have to leave my family and find another location, or thanks to you all for being thoughtful enough about creating this and taking away a monopolistic opportunity and giving control back to us, we can stay here, we can have great internet, and if we don't like it, we just go on and we can go change to another internet provider. It's the perfect situation. It's going to make this community great. I've seen it before. Anyone who wants to talk to me about it, I promise I can tell you it is the right move, and I thank you all so much for thinking about it. It is exceptional what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Would anybody else like to get up?
I'd like to talk. You gotta leave the third row too, raise your hand from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Brett Deering, and I work for the Mountain Home News as a reporter, normally behind the scenes. Yeah, I was in telecom for 15 years, fiber networks as well as data centers, and dealt a lot with the disaster recovery. That's the first thing I thought of. I go, what if, CenturyLink or Zito possibly goes down, which they all do, because one of the problems is what is called oversubscription, and they set oversubscription ratios to the point where it was before COVID, before everyone was online streaming real time constantly, and it was at one point it was 60-to-1 to 80-to-1 ratios, and that's why it's barely dial up when you're getting through. So. But yeah, 1-to-1 ratio with fiber and on separate networks, I saw as a, not only like if it all goes down or if the power grids and having UPS uninterrupted power supplies to the networks and to the base stations in key areas, that be completely autonomous away from all of it. So I saw that as a benefit, obviously. So I'm very much for it. I was working with Telecom when they were in Portland, when they were the trenches were opened. Telecom Act of '96 broke all that out. So a minute. Yeah, just like in high school. Like, okay, speech is over. Yeah, so it was Telecom Act of '96 created all these new telecom companies, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like the biggest problem that Quest at the time, or US West, said that they are. You go, why should we let them in on our lines, into our data centers? Why should we do that? You're right. You guys are doing it completely separately, which I think that I'm very much for it. So, so with that, yeah, you guys are doing it the right way, especially not owning the whole thing. I was like, oh man, finally. We've been waiting, well, I've been waiting since 2006 when I was doing this. So anyway, that's all I have. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, sorry, Rusty.
Mr. Mayor, is this time for the open comments? Are we going to close this and then open the comments to the city council?
No. We're gonna do we'll do the consent agenda. After the consent agenda, then we'll go to new business, and then we'll go to recognize person in the
I
audience.
thought I was in the front. Okay. Pardon me.
Anybody else like to get up? For or against? Come on, sir.
Say something else. Raise your hand again, say I'm still there, so maybe she doesn't. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name's Carl Olson. I live at 2222 Northeast Crestwood Place. I'm really in favor of fiber optics. My current provider, I have a download speed of 1.2 meg. I can't do anything, okay? And ever since I've had that, and I've talked to my current provider, and my current provider told me we have no plans to upgrade. Okay? My current provider is CenturyLink. I don't have a problem bad-mouthing them. Okay? Because I get no satisfaction from them. Okay? Fiber optics would really make a difference. Okay? I do a lot of stuff on the internet. Okay? I officiate high school sports. I get all my schedules on the internet and everything, and sometimes, and I have to take training on the internet, and most of the time I'm sitting there waiting for the buffering signal to disappear. So I'm totally in favor of this. I really appreciate the foresight into pressing forward with this, and I hope you approve it for the city of Mountain Home, because I really believe it is necessary. Short and sweet.
It's Carl. It's Karen. Would anybody else like to get up? Come on, sir.
Mayor, Council, my name is Brendan McCarthy. I live at 890 East 14th North. I just want to kind of start and say that I'm definitely, don't want to say completely for the fiber. I see the benefits of it, and it's something that I'm kind of leaning towards, especially since I work from home. That being said, the reasons why I'm not completely for it is I do have some reservations on it. I think the biggest thing that I am concerned about it is the fact that, you know, the ARPA funds. I don't think that's something that we should be using towards fiber that is not going to benefit every member of the town, especially if they don't want it, or they don't opt for it, or they can't even afford it. So I think that's something really to consider, is why are we using ARPA funds when not everyone in the town is going to benefit from that. Not already against fiber. I see it, you know, I see the speed, and I'm sitting there at home and I'm like, man, it would be nice to have, you know, 800 megabytes speed and everything, but it just doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't feel fair to others. You know, and it kind of goes back into that cost. It's like, I understand, you know, there's estimates and everything, but like, if you have this first LID and everyone's paying $2,500, and we get down to LID number 4, everyone's paying $3,500. I'm like, well, my neighborhood's not in that first LID. Is it going to be down the road? Am I going to be paying $3,500 versus, you know, someone paying $24,000? So it really, for me, I just can't see how the numbers and trying to make that kind of decision on wrapping my mind about just those issues now. So, especially since I think I've gone through kind of just the meetings and attending them, and it seems like this first LID seemed like it was pretty square and we had it all figured out. But I noticed in the last meeting we had, it kind of like changed a little bit. And it's in front of the fire station number 2. It looks like it kind of came out in a couple houses. I wish we had a map, but that's what I saw last time, and I'm just like, I don't understand why the change. And I'm like, well, maybe it's coming down my street. Maybe that's something, you know, I was kind of looking forward to, and that would help make my decision of like, oh, maybe I would want this or whatever. But so I don't understand if it's getting connected to the firehouse or why that kind of change come about and everything. But I guess those are just kind of the things, you know, that I've been kind of considering when sitting in this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. anybody else like to get up? Come on. Afterwards, you want to read the one letter from the lady? Okay.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Barbara Johnson. I'm at 670 Southwest Huber Street. And I am absolutely for fiber network. If I don't get fiber network in Mountain Home, I'm going to buy Starlink because our internet service is absolutely horrible. However, I have to agree with the last speaker because the cost keeps changing. The way it's structured keeps changing. What is it going to cost us, bottom line? What happens down the line if something changes? Who's going to be managing this every month? Who's going to be our provider? Is that going to change in the future, and what's that going to cost? I think that is the question that I have, that the cost of the fiber network to each home is not clear, and I'd like to see that clarified. Otherwise, I'm all for it.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a letter come in, and I'll let Tiff, we want to make sure that everyone had their voice heard, so Tiff is gonna read.
You guys, Mayor, Council, you all should have received this letter from Dorothy Johnson at 130 East 15th North. She just said, I object to the creation of the fiber optic LED1. I do not do internet. I have a limited income and I do not and cannot pay for a large sum of installation of fiber one. So,
okay. What was her name?
Dorothy Johnson.
Would anybody else like to get up?
Mayor, Council, my name is Tom Hissong. I live on 680 North 3rd East, right down the road here. The backbone of the fiber runs right down 3rd East, so close I can smell it. And I just want to get hooked up to the thing. I'm all for it. You guys, everybody on the council received letters from me a month and a half ago asking why are we kind of dragging our heels on starting in this spring and getting the first LED set up and start laying fiber. And at the time, people were talking about, well, we want to see 70% buy-in on it because that shows, if it's less than 50, we're not sure. I don't think we're ever going to get 70%. I was happy to see that it looks like maybe they barely reached 50%, and maybe they're going to start laying cable up there, laying fiber. And I think once that gets started, the rest of the town is going to see how great it is, and they're going to see that this is rolling. The price thing, I don't know. It does seem like for different lids, the price is going to be different depending on how many people buy in and stuff, and that's just a part of doing things. It's the way it would go if you were putting in a sewer or something. And as far as, I don't use internet, so I don't want to pay for it. I don't use the golf course. I've never hit a golf ball hardly in my life. I've been subsidizing it ever since I've been here, over 30 years now. The new pool they're putting in, I don't care if that pool ever gets built, but my money's going for it. My money's going into it, and that's part of being a citizen of the city, and I get that. I pay my taxes, and I'm okay with that. I would love to see this fiber go in. I will go ahead and say people have been kind of beating around. My son worked for Zito Media for many years, and I remember talking to him a lot about why some parts of town are worse than others and stuff. And yeah, Zito Media did buy out, what was it? It was a clipper ship kind of thing. I forget and it actually changed names a few times. But they're not putting in infrastructure. They don't care. They bought what's here, and they're trying to suck whatever money they can get out of it while cable TV lasts. Cable TV is dying. It won't be long, and people are gonna be streaming, and you gotta have a good, setup for streaming. And, I just wanna ask, let's get this started, let's get it rolling, and people are gonna see that it's good. And eventually, a few years down the road, I live in the middle of a bunch of renters. I've been going around trying to get people to sign up, and between people that rent and their landlords, that's hard to sell. They don't, and I wish there was a better way to convince them that it's going to increase the value of their rental home and stuff. I'm running out of time and I'm babbling on anyway, but let's do it.
Thanks, Tom.
Mayor, Council, my name is Misty Pierce. I am running for precinct member for Mountain Home 2, and I've been talking to a lot of people in my area. Unfortunately, I live near Escotio and Day Meadows apartments. They're not going to have the opportunity to do this. The managers are not going to put this in for them, so they're going to be left out. There are a lot of people in our area that feel like they can't afford it, will never be able to afford it, and it's discrimination, and I just want to let you guys know that.
Thanks, Christine. Anybody else?
I'm gonna scribble my name on this because I never do.
Sure you don't want 3 more minutes?
I'll go another 3 minutes if you want to hear about how great, how much Zito sucks. Did I say Zito sucks? I want to make that.
All right. Not seeing any other show of hands, I will close the public hearing, and we'll run down to the consent agenda. Council members, is there any piece of the agenda you want to discuss, pull, talk about? Councilman Brennan?
I had a question for Rich Yuki. In your letter to the council about accepting a bid on the taxi lane construction, you made specific mention that the contractor is not a certified DBE contractor. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I asked what Mayor Council asked what DB. That is, oh gosh, I asked somebody what that was the other day, and I can't remember what. Basically, they're a public works person, which that's what they needed to have. But this is for. They're not set up for. I don't think they have to do. I want to say it's like. Equal, not equal. I mean, it's how they hire. Is that John? You have what it is? Disadvantaged business. That's I knew it was something. Thank you.
Is it a requirement that they have that, or a requirement that they are not that?
It was a requirement that they had to. They just had to disclose it. So they have to have a public works license, which they did, but they just had to disclose that they're not a. What was it again? Disadvantaged. So it's how they hire people.
So by that. Call for you. By them not having that, we're okay. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, no, it should be. That was something they just had to put in for the FAA. I just copied what Toby had sent to the FAA, and that we came back.
And it pertains to this, but kind of just a general knowledge. When is a public works license truly required for work on behalf of the city?
When we're putting in like water, sewer, and the infrastructure type.
And there's a dollar amount.
And there's a dollar amount.
And there's a dollar amount.
Okay. Per project.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I had a question for you, Mr. Urquidy, too. You're the only one that had a note, which is good, right?
Sure.
The thing that caught my eye about this project was the 26 50 by 50 box hangers. And is the city intending on putting those in and leasing them out or renting them out? Or are they going to be private?
Mayor, Council, they would be spaces that people could lease out to build them themselves.
Cool.
So
that's a good idea.
Our next, I'll answer that. Our intention is to eventually try to get some hangars out there, but it's just hard to get the FAA money for those. So.
Mayor.
Councilman Brennan?
I apologize. I kind of missed your answer to that. That's like a down the road goal to have the hangars put in on the taxi lanes that we're constructing now.
Mayor, Council, one of our, on our CIP that we give to the state, our next AIP money that we're gonna look to try to spend is to design a bigger hangar to be able to put in jet things so they can keep it out of the weather and things like that we would build and be able to lease out.
But this contract is not authorizing.
This is just the
construction
taxiway piece.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
All right, council members, any other discussion through A through F?
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan?
Make a motion to pass the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
The motion is there any further discussion on the consent agenda? I'm sorry. Hearing none, I will call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
All right. Run down to new business items removed from the consent agenda. There were none, so we're going to run down to action item deliberation discussion on creating the fiber optics local improvement district number 1. Councilman? Council members?
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
I just have a couple comments on the testimony that we heard tonight. Thank you all for talking to us. This has been a big journey that I cannot take any credit for. These guys all have been wholeheartedly the people that have done this. A couple of things. The comments about dragging our heels. I just want to make sure that everybody understands our capacity. We have to watch the money. We have to watch the budget. And it's been a long time coming that we've all understood that this is even going to pay for itself. So I think we're working pretty well with that. The ARPA funds, I 100% agree. I think those funds need to be removed. We should not subsidize any utility in the city. And the other thing, and maybe this will come, is have we reached out to the schools and the hospitals yet? Again, that's a question I asked a couple times. So that's all I have to say.
And currently, right now, I just want everyone to know, we have no plans to spend ARPA money on the LAD one. Just sitting there, and then we'll probably bring it up at another council meeting. Rich and I want to bring a presentation back. We're kind of thinking using the ARPA funding for water. So that will be up for another discussion with the council. Get kind of a better synopsis and move from there. So as of right now, there's no plans to use ARPA funding for any of that. Just wanted the council to know that. What I heard, we listened.
Yes, good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I'd agree with Councilwoman Garvey. It's 2022, right? We're in a new age. We just went through a pandemic. Society itself is changing. One of my major questions, I put a little note here. Fiber for businesses. I think if we're going to adapt to the new age, we need fiber for our local businesses as well. I don't know if we throw that in LID 2 or 3, or we just focus on homeowners first. And I wanted everyone to know that this is going to be a long process because it's probably going to take 1.5 years. Is that about right, Kyle? Not to put words in your mouth, but there are a number of reasons that this is really key. I'm leaning more towards it.
And Councilman Stokes, reason we have to do an LID is the city has no, what's the word I'm looking for, authority to do an LID without the citizen, you know what I mean? That's per state statute. Other than we did go out for judicial confirmation, so the judge does say that this is a utility, and it's I've lost the word. Unnecessary utility, sorry. But businesses, we do have that authority if we so choose to. So I have been reached out to a bunch of businesses in the downtown corridor. Danny is going to get me some numbers for a whole string of businesses down there to let them know what it truly costs. We were lucky enough when Rich and Guho tore up the downtown. Some of those we were able to lay conduit. It just happened to be happenstance as we were putting in the trunk to get to wells and all that. So some of those businesses downtown, that we're going to get with them and give them an opportunity to jump on this platform. This LID also, I want to remind everyone, is for current residents. Anything new that comes will already have that capability. The fee will already been paid. The conduit will already be in the ground.
So established neighborhoods already that's what we have to open a LED.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I also wanted to address Barbara's comment. She was talking about she didn't know who the provider would be. The provider is going to be a private entity while the city owns the utility and you own the utility itself, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The citizens own the utility, hence like water, wastewater. Barbara, you will be able to choose your ISP provider. Though right now, I think we have 4 on net right now.
We have 4 different selections. We have 3 more providers that want to get on.
So you'll have a total of 7 to choose from. And if you don't like one of them, click them off, get another one in 60 seconds or less.
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan?
Question about, first thing, has the job application announcement closed out for the position we've announced for Mike's position? Fiber Mike?
We moved Katz into Mike's position, and we put it in for Katz's job, and it's closed and hired.
It is hired already? Okay. And so, I don't know how to phrase this question really. I've been told over and over again that the creation of the LID, we're going to basically borrow money up front to pay for all the installs. When all the, I guess I'll call them the books, are done and we know exactly the cost, then we divide that amongst all members of the LID that took. Not all residents, but all members that took the fiber.
Correct.
Right, so far. And so when we hire about 3 more employees, right, to do all the work and to man the phones, how do those jobs get truly paid for and maintained long term?
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, at first, all the LED will pay for all that. You know what I mean? And then hence that's why you want to go on your second LED, third LED. We're going to try to see if it's cost conducive to go out and have, say, we'll bid it out. And those, obviously those bid wins. So we have that true cost of what it's going to take to install and get it to homes. So those are the questions that when someone says, what is the true cost? And then we can able to say, hey, here's the loan. And they don't pay anything until that LID closes. So we won't even know a finite cost. So everyone will have a whole year of internet service provided to them, and then once the LID closes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, then they pay. If they so choose to do it, they amortize it over 15 years or pay all up front, right?
And so,
and that user fee, the $17.50, goes to pay, let's say, well, right now we don't need it for City Hall, right? I mean,
No, the intent, mirroring Ammons, would be you would continually to roll your staff into future LIDs until your project is done, and then you would have your maintenance and operation budget would then be collecting enough revenue that you would be able to sustain the employee base you've created.
Sure.
So we would just have to mirror that
And
as we move forward.
so now, though, with judicial confirmation, we've only been approved for 1 LID. At what point in the game do you get approvals or judicial confirmation for future LIDs? Number 2, 3, 4?
So I would go back long before the close of the first LED to the judge.
And what do we have to show? That it's being successful, that it's paying for itself, or?
Correct.
How do we show that, though, if we haven't closed it out? I don't know how that works. How do we show that it's successful if it's not yet, if we haven't even given a final bill to the customer yet, so to speak?
Right. So my question, that's a good question, because we kind of piggybacked on that. That judge is no longer here. So obviously we'd go and ask for another LED from a different judge.
Correct.
And
whoever the district judge is that's currently assigned is, which changes.
Right. And I guess we'd show them everything we showed for the first LED, and then the current, what we have for status and what we're able to do with it.
I think your take rate or your citizen request would be, once we have this first one out and the take rate is large enough that your citizen input is in high demand, they would probably grant you your second, because once you give it to them, they're going to want it, right?
I think what we'd ask the judge is to not limit us anymore for LED, just like they did Anna, they said, yep, go ahead, you have an LED, do as many as you want. I would ask the judge, can we do as many as we want now?
Okay.
Good question.
Follow up to that. Paul, for you, have you gone through this, doing the legal work on the LID? Or, I mean, asking for like a secondary one on judicial confirmation?
I've done it before, yes. I didn't do your first one, though. We went outside for that.
Okay. What happens to the city if the next judge says no? Well, like, sorry, have we hit that magical, like, 50% yet? Are we still at like 48 or?
2 LEDs, right, or 2 areas right now are over 50%.
What's the average of the whole LID? Do we know? Have we run those numbers?
Average percentage total
Of
all
those
4 neighborhoods?
Yes.
1 second.
We wouldn't even present it until we knew we got our numbers.
What do you mean by we got our numbers?
We would not prepare the package to go forward and put it in front of the judge until we knew we were going to be successful.
I see.
I mean, that was the thoroughness that Molly Johnson, whoever was their representative,
Yep.
that's what they did.
Okay.
So we would, I mean, and if it's me, I wouldn't even push it forward until I knew we had our numbers and that we show that we'll be successful.
Okay. And with, my brain's all over the place, I apologize.
You're good.
I'm really in favor of this. I know I've been a thorn in your side, but like, I definitely see the benefit. I want my questions answered, and they come to me as I run my mouth. But as far as the LID number 1, you mentioned contract is the way we're going with it, not city employees.
City employees, that's where we will decide which is probably the best. We're gonna run some numbers. Paul, or not Paul, sorry. Bruce will kind of construct, that cost estimate. He's gonna construct us, if we go out and look at numbers, and if, if we can do it better in-house and faster in-house or cheaper, we'll do it Bruce's way. Bruce, didn't he say the last few LEDs he contracted out?
Yeah, one of the things he suggested is maybe where our guys are struggling up in the Silverstone area with the rock, that we contract that out and then we move our crews to the north end where it's nice, softer, and we share the load. So there's been a couple ideas.
Combination.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we want it to be as cost effective as possible and minimal cost to the taxpayer. So that's what we're trying to save the dollar.
So I could be totally wrong, right? Our city's only so big, but if we have at some point, LIDs will end, right? And so I might be thinking too far into the future, but if we're hiring employees for a job that we know will end one day, can we put it in their employment? It's not a contract, but to say, hey, when the job's done, you no longer could be employed. I think that's important, but...
And that's what Ammon did.
They did.
Yep. Mayor, I think that Bruce, when he spoke that meeting, that's what he said specifically is our intent we would have to be honest at the hiring process that this is seasonal as long as LIDs are open.
And that's in writing that they sign?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then in Ammon, Bruce vetted, he basically was able to vet staff to say, yeah, hey, this is the guy I want to bring on and make a full-time employee or gal, and they had those opportunities, so.
To become full-time staff.
Thank you. At this moment, my last comment is, Mayor, I just wanted to thank you publicly for making your comment of no ARPA money. I think the three of us have been shouting that from the mountaintops, and to hear you agree to it, I appreciate it. So thank you. And I would just ask that if this moves forward, that in the motion, that it is clearly stated in the motion that no government subsidy will be provided for individual users.
So what if I go out for a different grant? Broadband grant.
Let's just stick to that.
Yeah, let's.
You were winning. A grant. You know what I mean, right?
I know. I'll give you a hard time.
People need to pay for what they're getting.
Yeah.
If we get a grant, the whole city gets to take advantage of it.
What's that?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Stubbs.
I had a couple follow-up questions. A couple of them are legal. Given that some of us, council and mayor, might live within the LID boundaries itself. Do we have to declare that at all? It seems like it could be a conflict of interest. I live in LID 1.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
So do I.
And so do I.
Convenient.
I'm just trying to be transparent, right?
Yeah.
They just picked right this. Well, so the answer obviously as a policy decision like that would have to be no, because otherwise government could move on.
Right.
Gotcha.
And you would render, you disenfranchise the voters. So obviously that can't be. However, in the exercise of due caution, I would say, is the only reason if you vote, let's say you vote yes, is the only reason you're voting yes because of the benefit it gives you?
No.
Okay, see, it's as simple as that. If you're doing it for the benefit of the community and you as an elected official representing all of them, you think this is in the best interest of your city, then that's fine. If you feel you can't render an impartial decision because you're like, oh, like whoever he is, I want it, you know, then maybe don't vote and then recuse yourself.
Okay, Paul, I had one other question. What kind of legal liability does the city partake in by creating a utility like this? Is there any?
Well, just like any other utility we create, if we're out there working on the sewer and we leave the manhole cover undone and little granny goes through with her poodle down the hole, we have liability.
Yeah.
And so just like anything else, we have, whatever we do, we have to do it exercising due care.
Okay. And Mayor, the last question I had is, what happens when the homeowner does not pay our city fee for fiber? I know it happens with water every now and then. At the end of the year, we
Turn them off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Simple.
Well, let me for cats or
Cats.
Kyle unplug them.
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan.
I was saying, Paul, you should have told them to conflict themselves out so I can make the decision. If they're all conflicted, I'll make that decision.
Mayor.
Councilman McCain.
I would like to thank everybody that's here tonight, for, against, whichever, and for the people who sent letters in, for or against. I've lived here for most of my life, and I know how internet services has been around here. And I have not lived in just one location in town. I've lived all over town, so I know it is sketchy all over town. So I do know that this can do nothing except benefit the residents of Mountain Home, and I think we can get much more lucrative businesses in town when we do have a fiber internet that actually works. And I'm really glad to see that we actually, it looks like we have a pretty cohesive council on this, finally.
And I want everyone to know too, there's other areas where if it's a lower, let's say Miss Pierce said that it's lower end or lower poverty range. If I can go out for grants and if council's so inclined, maybe that's something where I could, if I go get a broadband grant and you can add a couple of areas together to get take rate up and split that cost. I know when you say costs, I ask everybody, what are you paying a month right now in your area? Is it $50 a month? Is that what you're paying right now?
Yep.
Or more?
Well, the apartments get 30, they get a discount through, I feel like I found out, they're paying $35 and it's an offer for anybody in their apartments.
Okay, so if you're paying, so this gentleman back there says he's paying more than $50 a month in that area. So to me, the LID is perfect for you because let's say either you can't come up with the upfront cost, right? You amortize it out 15 years, you amortize that fee, the $7.99 I think is what this gentleman said, and then your $17.50, you're right around $50 a month, 50 and change, or maybe was it?
You're only gonna pay that until.
What is 17? 50 plus 7.99 plus, what do we say it was, like $24?
Mm-hmm.
So it's at $49.49. So let's just say $50. You're getting symmetrical 15 or gig up, gig down, no data caps, no contracts. And if you're frustrated with your provider, you can move off to them in and then the cool thing is after that LID is paid off, if it takes you 15 years to pay it off, afterwards you only have your $1,750 plus your $799, which is $2,549. So then it makes it very reasonable for all constituents. And I know there was one of the ISPs that you can get 15 and 15 for $1.99.
Yeah, it's
really inexpensive.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'll shut up. I'll get off my soapbox. Councilman McCain.
I would actually love for you to look into seeing if this passes, if we can get some type of grants to help the low income to be able to get onto this program.
Okay.
Or people who can't afford it, period.
Grants. Go ahead.
Council, there are several that we've looked at. They are pretty in depth, and so the goal is to try to do some kind of grant funding, because we do know they're out there. So
Yeah, but we got a great grant writer.
Absolutely, no, I'm not saying that at all. Sometimes we happen to get them, like Councilman McGarvey sent us some, and it's like the deadline's tomorrow. Just saying, you know what I mean? So it's just finding the right grant, the right timing, where we can compile enough data that it is necessary for our residents. So
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Mayor, one other quick thing. I wanted to go back on the schools and the hospitals. And there may have been conversation, I don't know, but I think we are missing a huge opportunity there, huge. The hospital, I don't know what it would look like for St. Luke's. They're a huge organization, the schools, but right there, you could get LID too, boom. So.
I did reach out to the IT guy. Bruce told me that the school was going out for a request for proposals. I asked if the city could put in for something like that. Asked them where all their communications, some of it's at the junior high, but some of it is at what's that 3rd Street down here, the office? So I asked because we were literally right next to them, if we could help them, and then and then also St. Luke's were right behind them. So
Yeah, and that's just a huge opportunity.
for sure.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I would second Councilwoman Garvey's that telemedicine is going to be the future. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to create fiber optics local improvement district number 1 with one specific caveat that no ARPA funds will be used.
Second.
It's been motioned and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes.
Aye.
Councilman Kane.
Aye.
Councilman Brennan.
I was hoping for a more specific caveat, just no government subsidies. Are you willing to change that?
No.
So really quick. So ARPA is from the Federal CARES Act funding. So what if we get more only broadband money? Not this ARPA funding, but what if down the future?
It'll probably be called a different act, so no.
Okay.
We've done pretty good. All right.
Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
All right. Let's run down to item number 3. Council members.
can I just say
Crap you
something?
just took, man.
Barbara, you asked who would maintain, so if you needed a service call, it's the city. So these 2 gentlemen up here would probably be who we would dispatch out to help you. Okay.
So the cool thing is it won't be, we'll get to you next Thursday, be home between 8 and 5. It'll be in 15, 20 minutes if they're not super busy.
Welcome to your new roles.
All right, thank you all that came out and testified for and against. It shows, that you care about this, so it's awesome. It's good to hear. So we're gonna run down to action item, discussion deliberation on vacating half the South 2nd Street. Raymond, you wanna come on down? This is your baby.
Mr. Mayor? Can we have Mr. Urquidy chime in on this too? Because I've been watching this a little close too.
Well, I think you'll want fire.
Do you have fire?
Chief Moore. Is Chief Moore here? Or did he go?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's voted for it. It's
Thanks,
been
Kyle.
a long run, so
Good work.
I'm super excited.
No, it's fine. You gotta do it.
Is Chief Moore? Did he go?
Spell it wrong.
So really quick, Council.
I might
Chief
call
Moore.
No, he's right
He's
there.
right
Yeah, come on in, Chief.
I think Council. Where's your sling, dude?
Yeah. What'd you do?
Yeah, they can go.
I wounded myself a lot of work.
This was done early for them, so they didn't have to stick around.
All right, Raymond, your show. Let's rock and roll.
How we doing? All right, so to begin with, if you do open up the business end of it, I would be interested in the business end for the fiber for sure. And possibly more than one location, but we'll talk about that later. All right, so the street was closed down, I think, late 2020. That intersection was closed down. So that essentially rendered the road in front of the stockyard basically useless legally, with obviously the Paul's business being closed down. Everybody was using that for the road. So as far as my understanding is, the bar would technically own the property all the way to the middle of the street anyway. So, and it kind of limits our ability to, the way it's structured right now, because it is a city street, I would like to use it for events, street parties, that kind of thing. And what I have to do now is it's a $500 insurance rider that I have to get to cover the street. Plus, then I come to the once a month meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, which that's the hardest part for me. Just, because I work all night and sleep all day, so getting up at 9 in the morning is a little rough. But, I would like to have the ability to cover that under my current policy. It wouldn't be part of the bar specifically, but it'd be part of the bar's insurance. So I'd still have to come and get a catering permit if I wanted to do something on the street. But I could just come and apply for a catering permit instead of having to go through a planning meeting and everything else and close it down. I don't plan to do any major modifications as far as limited access to it. At some point I might put up some concrete barriers in the center just to make it easier to put up fencing to cordon it off once we do an event. But other than that, it would essentially remain the same. So that's about kind of what I'm thinking. It's just, and at this point, Ace Hardware kind of proved my point today when they shut off the road, the current road to get in there, because now with that parking lot closed down, you can't access the road. And even if that road is accessible, my thought would be, obviously with Ace Hardware going in there and the liquor store and everything that's going to move in there, that if you could somehow make still a one-way road, but have a right-hand turn coming off that intersection so they could get their trucks and everything through there. And that would also help the fire department and everything too. If that wasn't open, they could still come through, or that was open, they could still come through there and respond. And local police officers could come to respond. Not that we have any issues, but, some things happen at bars, we'll say. But if that intersection was open with a right-hand only turn, then they wouldn't have to blow through the parking lot. Because that's a dangerous thing. I've watched that, and they're not doing anything wrong. I mean, the police officers, when they're responding, but they're responding at 1 in the morning when there's a bunch of intoxicated people running around, and there's some people that have almost gotten hit, not because of the police officers, because drunks aren't smart. So they're doing their job and responding to what they need to respond to, but it's kind of a dangerous area to have them have to blow through that parking like that, where they could come through that where it's not blocked off and get to that street. So I don't know with the whole thing with ITD, if you could actually make that a right-hand only turn. I think it would be a lot safer. But even so, that half of South 2nd East, my half of South 2nd East would still be essentially useless to anybody but me, obviously.
So Raymond asked me, and I said I have no authority, and I told him he'd have to bring this to you. So it's up to you what you guys want to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Thanks, Raymond, for coming. I was going to touch base with Chief Moore here, because last I remember, when we put up those blocks, completed downtown, but those 2 cement blocks there, ITD did not want that to align with Maine, right? And then we were talking to the rural fire, or supposed to, about a gate of some kind. Yeah, did we ever get anywhere on that gate or arm or whatever we're going to call it?
Councilman Stokes, the short answer to that is meeting with the chairman some time ago. The discussion about that, they showed no interest at incurring an expense to do that. The other discussion that was out there at a point was also to have something where you'd have removable ballards for utilize it as a paradeway and so forth there for those type events. But last speaking with Commissioner Jewett on rural fire, they did not want to incur any expenses at that time.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
And also, I was going to ask you, Mr. Urquidy, I was watching that street over this winter. We did not plow it. I promise you. I don't think a plow went through that whole street the whole time. It feels like the city has already vacated that street in a way.
Well, I'll give Gene's guys kudos. They did actually come and do some patchwork. So Gene's guys are out there working.
So, let me ask Mark a quick question. No, okay, real quick. Is there any issue with fire truck being able to get to Raymond's building? I know you have your ladder truck now, but is there? That's my question.
Right, Mayor, Council. To that question, initially when the decision was made, how it was in terms of emergency response, and we negated the reasons and so forth, that wasn't going to be an issue. Oddly enough, the biggest concern that I would have in terms of structures would probably be the stockyard. A concern that I would have, not knowing how the traffic and these type things, I'd have questions about that, but you still will have traffic, I'm assuming, parking by Jovial Jerry's. They'll utilize that street. So for us to go up there and set up and go with your piece of property with the stockyard is kind of on an island, literally. So I think fire code wise and so forth there, I think that we're fine in that regard, but losing the ability to have access to what would be side C of the new to be Ace Hardware or side A of the structure of the stockyard would be advantageous to have access to that with the fire apparatus for sure.
And I have no plan in putting anything out there other than it's just easy for me to do events because it just saves me a bunch of money and time and the effort to try to do like street parties and things like that. So, and if the bar burnt down, I have no problem with that. I'll collect the insurance money to run.
That's on record, you know that, right?
I've said that to so many people, it doesn't really matter if it's on record.
Raymond, I'm going to give you some tough questions here, and I hope you can appreciate them. Right? You mentioned first.
I'm used to that from you.
Yeah, I know, right? I think everybody's getting there after almost 4.5 years. You mentioned a catering permit. That you still have to get that. But if you take ownership of the land and you redo your floor plan with ABC, you probably won't have to get a catering permit. Is that right?
Well, I would, because I wouldn't add it to the license. I would just add it to the building part of the insurance. Because that way, because if I add it to the license, then it wouldn't do me any good because I couldn't have all ages out there.
Okay, so that's a choice then, right? Okay, copy that. And then you mentioned, police response and stuff with drunks. There shouldn't be any drunks coming out of your bar, right?
Well, no, it's from other places.
From the other boat.
Yeah. We hold church services on the weekends. We don't.
Okay, I say that in jest, but really, right? Well, there shouldn't be any drunks leaving bars. Otherwise, we have other problems.
Well, I mean, when you get to the point of intoxication, you're not making good decisions anyway. Plus, they want to go help.
Correct.
Everybody wants to come out and help because they recognize a city officer that they know, or they want to watch.
Or film.
Yeah, I mean, it's entertainment at that point.
Absolutely.
Bar is fun and all, but
And if I heard you right, you want us to vacate your half, but not Ace Hardware's half.
Correct.
So why wouldn't you advocate for them too?
Well, I mean, if they want their half, that's great, but I would think it would be easier if that half stays open and they can get their trucks through there. If you can make a right-hand turn only lane, it's going to make their life easier to do deliveries, and because they're going to have to. Even if they're going to unload at that rear dock behind the building, they're going to have their trucks come all the way around that block to that residential neighborhood and face the other direction if they want to get out easily. Because they're not going to, if they've got a delivery in the middle of the day and the parking lot's full, it's going to be hard to get a semi through that parking lot. I mean, they're going to run into the same challenges I see that Albertsons run into all the time with their dock. So I'm thinking ahead for them, actually.
But it's their responsibility to get a commercial vehicle in, right?
True.
Just like it's somebody else's responsibility to get a commercial vehicle into the property they're asking for tonight. Are we allowed to vacate half of a road and keep the other half as a functional road? Put concrete barriers down the middle?
There are regulations governing the widths of roads. You probably know that answer better than I do off the top of my head. But also we're not really doing, was there an application filed under 501321? And all that stuff. So you got to give. You can't just vacate half a road without giving due notice to the other half of the road, to have them weigh in, so whoever that is, Paul's or Ace, whatever that is.
Jovials.
So there's,
Jovials, yeah.
there's a process under 1321 and 306. 306?
I don't know, that's the fourth number I wrote down.
Write them all down.
I'm calling you out.
No, yeah. Well, sorry, 50.
We're just making stuff over there now.
1321, 50-311. Yeah, I just use lots of numbers, and then people are like, wow.
I do that too.
Yeah. Those are the two. Anyway, so that has to be an application. Notice has to be provided. Doesn't technically require a public hearing, but notice has to be provided to the adjoining property owners, and then if an entire, and then you guys get to decide whether the street is to be vacated. If it does, half of it goes to the one side, half of it goes to the other side, assuming it's in the middle there like that. In 25 years, I'll say that's the first time anybody said, can we vacate half a road? I've never heard of that before. That's an interesting one. I would want to know, and I would go look up, because I don't know off the top of my head, whether there is a minimum width requirements for roads for fire, for police, and so I'm leaning towards, but I do not know, that is not permissible to vacate half a road.
Okay.
But I would have to think legally now it's not a road, because right now you cannot access that road legally unless you drive through someone else's land to get there.
You can drive down the other side and enter it.
Mayor Council, it is a road. I mean,
It's
it's
a
just
dead
not,
end,
it's,
and it has
it's
to
not a
be-
through road.
Yeah.
It would need to be vacated, so it's the decision of the city that it's no longer going to be used for.
So I guess the
public
question,
road purposes and stuff.
I guess the question is there an appetite from the council to move this forward or not? Councilwoman Garvey.
I'm sorry, I need a little bit of clarification. First of all, why was the street closed? I wasn't here, so. Okay.
Mayor Council, I can kind of give you that. So when we first applied for the downtown project, and when we put all of the accesses and everything when it went to ITD, that is because of how many different conversion points there are. They would like to close
We're not
it.
gonna be
That was
5
part of
points
their-
in
that was their
20 miles?
recommendation. So it was kind of an ITD. That's what they wanted to do, was close that.
Okay, so I guess my quick thought, in just listening to all of this, I feel like if we closed off or vacated your half, which also doesn't make sense to me, I've had this discussion in planning with Brock. I feel like if in the future we do that and you sell, or we want the road back, or we need the road, or something else is gonna be planned, then we've shot our future planning as a city. That's just kind of my quick thoughts. I understand what you're saying as far as the street parties and stuff, which are great for our town. The town loves them, but thinking down the future, are we going to come ask you to unvacate if that's even permissible?
It's not permissible.
Yeah. So
Sell it to us.
I think if we do that, it could hinder our potential future planning. We may want that road someday.
Councilman Brennan.
She goes into the next topic I didn't quite get to yet, is that we authorized Rich Cherokee to start the process of a master transportation plan. And I think it would not behoove of us to make this action before that master transportation plan is done. Because the smart brains that do that kind of engineering might tell us that we need that road in the future. So I wanted to make that point. And then to the thing about the rural fire chief is that I had commissioners tell me that after that meeting, we talked about, access for fire trucks and whatnot, that the city approached them and told them that they would have to bear the full cost of any type of gate or structure there for a fire truck to get out onto North 2nd East. And I'm not sure that was the direction that the council made at that time, that they would have to pay the entire thing. But that's what they were told, and so they've kind of stopped forward momentum with that, so to speak, unless, I'd after the master transportation plan comes in, and if they tell us we never need that road again, I'd love to have that conversation as a group with rural fire included.
Sure, Councilman Brennan, and if I may add to that, we did have a meeting that I recall clearly, and I believe council was present at this meeting, that it was offered by one of the commissioners that they would incur the cost of putting something up there by way of a fire truck access gate.
Did they
That was
offered
one-
the full cost?
Yes, that was one commissioner that offered the full cost, and that was not received well by the other two commissioners. That's my recollection.
If we get to that point, I think we should have a quorum present where we can have a duplicate meeting, or whatever you call it, a double. Both voting parties present.
Mayor, council, and I think one thing on that too was we didn't know how fire traffic was going to actually run when we closed that, and do we really need that, because we've been running with it 3 years and we've never had a problem in the 3 years with not having a fire access to have to go through there. So I think that was some of the thinking with that also a little bit, to see what was, do we really need one there? Do we need to have that cost to put a gate there that we haven't used in 3 years? So, but we can certainly, it's something we can always have and look at, so.
Mayor. Oh, go ahead.
Councilman Goby.
Just real quick to piggyback on that, again, thinking the future down the road, when we do have all these 1,500 homes come in here, we might need that access. That might be the direct from rural fire. And I mean, it hasn't impacted you guys to be closed, obviously, or has it?
No, I know no adverse effects with that road being closed, and I agree with what I hear with the conversation with growth and so forth. Having options are certainly always better than having no options.
Councilman King?
In the time I've been here, we've vacated several roads, but we have never vacated a half of a road. I would not be in favor of vacating a half of any road. Either vacate the whole road or none of it.
Councilman Brennan?
Have we even had an AFAB parade since it's been closed? I'm not sure. Because that's our staging spot, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
They moved the blocks.
We had to have a parade and we moved the blocks, yeah. And they put them right back
So-
as soon as it was over.
One AFAB occurred since then?
I think it was a Christmas parade.
It was a
They moved
Christmas
it.
parade.
I don't remember what parade it was, but they
It was
moved the
Christmas
block
parade.
down.
It was a Christmas
They moved
parade.
the parade and put them back after.
But if it's vacated, both sides,
Yeah.
then we have to totally redo the staging for our AFAB. And that is one of the biggest events of our community. Not saying we can't, but I mean, that's kind of the natural makes sense spot.
Ms. Mayor? So, Councilman Stokes?
I was just going to ask Mr. Yerkiti, and I know we have a former ITD supervisor here. What is ITD's big picture plan for that little section if we're going to have it closed off? It seems to me like I would be more in favor of moving forward, vacating both sides, because it's pro-business to me.
Well, right now, it can't go left because there's no light for it, period. End of story. That's the problem. And so if anything, it would have to be a right out only. And I thought we were going to, in the pathway plan or the downtown reconstruction, weren't we going to sidewalk that corner?
Well, there is sidewalk there, Mayor, Council, there is sidewalk right now.
Over the road, though. Wasn't that what was that supposed to be, or no?
I don't think so. But I think one of the reasons too, and I, if people are coming on Main Street or on Jackson and heading into town, not being able to have it, I mean, if you make the wrong right, you're going to go on a one-way street, and then so those, I mean, that's I think that's some of the thinking that was there. I wasn't.
What was there is that the lane diet caused
That lane diet, yeah.
So when the lane diet went in front of Wells Fargo there, it took away that straightaway shot. The only thing we allowed was for them to put a gate there so a fire truck could come out and immediately make a left on Jackson to go back on the main to go under the underpass.
Right.
But that was up to the city. ITD just said, we will keep that there. It's up to you to put the arm and everything else and control it yourself.
So, what I'm hearing, council, is you want to wait for the master plan, transportation plan, before you do anything?
What's the timeline on that?
Well, I have it in this next budget. So that's when it would get started.
So, council members, what do you guys want to do then on action item number 4?
Mayor, I just have one quick clarification question.
Go ahead,
Did I hear
Councilwoman.
you say you were going to put a sidewalk across that?
I asked Rich, wasn't that part of the discussion back in the day, was to put a sidewalk over it?
Because if you're going to sidewalk it, then you might as well vacate it because you can't use it.
But that could have been wrong. That could have been one of the 1,000 discussions we had with downtown.
Wait, we can't have AFAD still.
No. Yeah.
Sidewalk.
No.
So, I just want to clarify.
No,
Okay.
I'd rather see,
Just making sure.
honestly, I'd rather see some bollards put up for right now instead of the concrete blocks. You know, we get it a little bit more classy, but that's just me. So, what do we have on action item number 4, council members?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I'd request that Mr. Yerkiti do a little bit of research and see what vacating the entire road to be more pro-business would look like. That's my thought.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Brennan?
Raymond, I'm sorry as always. I'm going to make a motion to deny vacating half of South 2nd East Street.
Second. It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
I would like to add quick. Maybe in the future, we could work together and make something really cool in that area. If it's like it's never going to be used by the city. I agree with what you're saying, but I have to agree with these guys.
Mr. Mayor? I'd add on to Councilwoman Garvey. It looks like it'd be a great little area for a community event center, vacating half of it for the businesses. I know that not only you would benefit, but Jovial Jerry's will benefit as well. I also think that Ace Hardware could benefit in some fashion from the city vacating the entire road, not just half.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing now, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman McCain? Aye. Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
All right. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
On down to action item number 4, deliberation decisions on Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation to deny amending the 2020 City Comprehensive Plan to include impact fees.
Didn't make a lot of Could we have the chief removed from this room, please?
Now, he don't get the 3-minute rule on you.
He's harassing me.
So, council members, you want to fire away your questions? We got Ann Westcott here with us tonight.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just give a little,
You bet. Go ahead.
not that I just love firing questions, but, just for your clarification in mind, we are obviously not here tonight to decide whether or not to adopt fees. We are reorienting ourselves to what the past actions were and what options are in front of you. P&Z did have a concern about the growth rate, and we can talk about that, and I have information for you here about that. We can also talk about if there are concerns about the level of the impact fees. I want to make sure that council members understand what may seem like an obvious way to get the fees down is not the way. That there are other ways to successfully get to that end if that's what your choices are, and I'd be happy to go through those with you. Now fire. Fire, fire, fire.
Councilman Brennan.
Thank you for being here. And it's been a long time in the works, but I had a chance to kind of pick your brain for a few seconds privately about all this. And so I guess, could you tell us really quick what you just alluded to is if we think the number's too high, and we choose to lower it, what's the detriment to the city?
Sure. Many people think if the fee feels too high, that by changing the growth rate, that will reduce the fee. And I think there's been an explanation of why that is not true, but I'll explain that is not a way to make that happen. There are two very legitimate ways to make it happen. To circle back, one illegitimate way is to just say we'll adopt half of it. Not a good policy choice, because then you are under collecting for the rest of time and you end up like Nampa with a completely underfunded CIP. Two very legitimate policy decisions are, one, reduce the cost of the CIP by taking projects out of it and accept that will reduce your level of service. Like, don't build a fire station it'll take longer to respond. Don't build more police headquarters because maybe you're not going to hire the officers anyway. Totally can do that. Another option is to say, no, these are the projects in the CIP that the city wants for the next 10 years, but we don't want growth to pay 100% of the growth-related costs. We're going to have growth pay 50% or 75% of the growth-related costs, and we are going to make up the difference with general fund dollars. Both of those are totally legitimate policy options that keep the impact fee fund whole, allow you to move toward a CIP that's in alignment with your objectives. It's really just making different decisions about your level of service or who should pay.
Council, I went to a Treasure Valley Partnership meeting Monday last week and met with probably 8 other mayors. And they are all probably hitting up hand as we speak, or you're working on their CIP or their impact fee summaries. Nampa was the biggest one that you just brought up. So right now, her citizens are subsidizing, and obviously, from what I've been told, or what I've been listening to, is you don't want the citizens to subsidize new growth. New growth should pay for itself. So I just want you to know that however you vote, I'm going with the subject matter expert, Ann. It was, not only was it Nampa, I mean, there's other cities that are looking into doing this exact same thing.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey.
I just have a couple comments, and I spoke with Ann at great length to make sure they fully understand these impact fees. And first, just off the top, if there's a concern, I don't have a concern with your growth calculation. I read it. I understand it. I think if it needs to be brought down, I think the only place I would see it being brought down is in parks, you know, some of those different various projects. But what is important to me is that, for my own personal, can't speak for the rest of the council, but if we don't correct our impact fees now, we are going to hurt our council 10 years down the road, because they're going to have to pay for these things out of general funds. We're not going to have the money. So then we're going to have to subsidize all this new growth, and then we're going to couple it, and I know I beat up House Bill 389, I know I do, but it's really important you guys understand what those numbers look like. We are at 5.19% right now. And if we reach 8%, we don't get any more money. So our general funds are going to be tapped out, and then we're going to have the taxpayers subsidizing police stations, fire stations. And then we're going to hurt our council 10 years down the road. Because this is slow money. This money doesn't come to us quickly. So I think that it's important. And it's also important to note that if the bottom drops out of the market, we can revise these in a year. But right now, growth is not paying for itself. Sorry, developers. That's my take on it.
And thanks for all the work you've done. I remember the first time here, one of my big questions was, why is this not a dynamic formula, right?
You expect me to remember that?
Yeah, that was my main thing.
Brilliant. I've often thought about that conversation.
The reason I think a dynamic formula would work in this case is because population rates go up and down and up and down. Plus, we really don't have a truly accurate representation of our population down to the individual, right? That's the U.S. government and the census. And I know that this last census lied a bunch. I think that's even documented. Kind of interesting. I don't know why. So you said something about if we do a percentage of it, it's really bad. Could you explain why that is?
If you just decided, it's the same as deciding to balance your budget by just cutting 10% across the board. Hope you've never done that. It's not a good idea. Because you're not making the hard decisions about what to cut. You're just saying, just take it all out. Please tell me you did not just poke things. You could just do that. You could just say, let's, just cut them in half. But what you've left me with is a CIP that you will only collect half of the money for, so half of it will remain unfunded. But the CIP still has all the projects on it. So you'll get to the end of 10 years, you will have collected half the money, assuming you have no other money to put into it. You will have told the public you have a list that has 10 things and you only funded 5 of them. You can't go back and get the money you left on the table, and you don't have money to put in that. So you basically failed by 50%. A better way to rectify that is, before making a size yours, shrink your CIP to half the size. So the numerator is shrinking by half, but the denominator is the same. Your fee will naturally shrink by half. Just remember that shrinking the CIP is acknowledging a decrease in your level of service. So we set your CIPs, for example, police, thousands of people need so many more officers. We decide this is how many square feet we need to put those officers in. The interesting point is I already have fiscally constrained your CIPs to acknowledge the fact that you don't have enough property tax revenue. So we should be hiring 14 officers over the next 10 years. Bad news, Paula here has already said we can only afford 7. So I've already cut it in half. We've already accepted a lower level of service just because of House Bill 389 and other things. So we could choose to cut that fee in half by maybe assuming there were only 4 officers or something. But you're essentially planning then for never having enough officers to respond in the same way that they do today, which is fine. It is your prerogative to make that level of service decision, but I think there's some advantage of the discipline of looking at the CIP and deciding we don't want growth to pay a fee that's this amount, and so we will take some projects off the list, which will lower the total cost per house, unless you can subsidize it with something else. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I guess I was also wondering, given what Councilwoman Garvey was saying, you know, in these roles, we take a big picture look at things, right? So I see building costs like this. I see inflation like this. I see taxes like this. What is going down? The stock market's going down. It went up a little bit today.
I just calculated that in there, actually.
I'm going to say it. I see some kind of recession happening soon. Just me. That's just my single one councilman opinion. Is this the time right now to put all these fees into, say, a development or into the city where we have a market that hasn't existed before, but it's trying to get here? Do we want to stop something like that? What if it is a development that has, quote, I hate this word because affordable is not a thing anymore, but more affordable housing options?
You've asked 4 really excellent questions. Before I forget them, I'll answer them. I'll start going backwards. The state statute does allow the city to exempt affordable housing as defined by however you want to define it. You can't just waive it. The city needs to pay the fee to keep it full, but for the old definition of affordable housing, we can take care of that. Do any of us know what will happen over the next 10 years? Of course not. Which is why I use statistics, I trend them, we start there, and we know they will be wrong, and we will change them as we go. The good news is, when we do the math right, which of course I do, there is a 1-to-1 relationship between a house and its proportional share of fire, police, parks, and streets. So you could keep going at a 10% growth for the next 3 years and get a lot of money up front, and then we hit another drop. And then you're not going to make very much money. By year 10, it will have averaged out. Tomorrow we could have an apocalypse and there will be no more growth ever. Stop collecting impact fees, obviously. If you believe that the market will do what the market does over a 10-year period, There will be times where there are a lot of people pulling building permits and times where fewer people are pulling building permits. But regardless of how many people are pulling permits in 1 year, those houses still have the same proportional or incremental impact on the city's ability to be prepared to serve that growth over a long period of time. It is completely acceptable as a policy decision in a community where, let's say, if you have a strategic need for economic development or housing of any type, or just general growth, you could just decide we don't want to do anything that might disincent growth from coming to this area. The first answer is there is no empirical evidence that impact fees disincent growth. You got stuff happening here that is making this a marketable community. Impact fees might be the last fee on top, but are not the one that, probably the price of lumber first, that would change people's willingness to build. But it's your choice to decide what you think the market can bear. And if you are worried that the impact fees will cause fewer homes to be built in your community, that is up to you to decide. And that might be where you say, I think this number is more acceptable than this number. Let's constrain the CIP to get to that number. That's one of the reasons I show you the comps across the whole state, and particularly the valley. Boise's just adopted $12,000 a house. So we could have a legitimate concern that if everyone else was lower than you, then obviously you were not competitive. It's the inverse, but still there are a lot of things at hand in your community. So I am not worried that the market is going to, it will have to crash completely and forever for this to no longer be an issue. Most cities believe that periods of fast, strong economic growth are good times to increase their impact fees if they have under-planned in the past, because there's less disincentive. If the margin's already pretty good and you put a fee on it, you still have a margin. If the margin's really bad and you put a fee on it, you may have killed it. That goes back to the council as to, does that matter? How much growth do you want? What kind of growth do you want? And who do you want to pay for it? And all of those are your decisions.
Okay. That's right. Oh. I have one last question, and given the timeline of all of this, there's some projects going on by local people even. Is now the time, or can we implement this, say, October 1, 2022? Or are there big implications for something like that? Like, give them one season of, hey, you can build until...
Absolutely. You can do pretty much whatever you want to do within Paul's boundaries. Sometimes when fees are going up noticeably, this is what we did in Nampa, is you can either say, instead of being effective in 30 days from adoption, we'll do 90 days from adoption. That allows people to get, the permits pulled. A more surgically correct way, I think, to do it is to say, if you are this far through the permitting process, you've, submitted this, blah, 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 you're grandfathered. No matter how long it takes you to get, you've based your construction financing on not having this fee, we'll get you through. So you have ways, if you're just worried about this interim, to let people get through without the surprise. Everyone else will not be surprised. They will have known.
Well, and I say October 1 because that's when our budget cycle starts, if that makes any sense to the council or Paula or...
It's a nice, round figure.
And it gives them time because the construction window is basically going to close by a couple
that
weeks after
certainly
that.
can be, that's something you can put in your ordinance as to when they go into effect.
Councilman Brennan. Thanks, Mayor. Councilman Stokes, towards your comment of like a desire of a, I forget the term, dynamic formula, based on what I'm hearing, what I think I've heard in the past is it's kind of dynamic on a year-to-year basis, but not on like an individual basis, because if we set 100% of the proposed fee right now, next year we can readjust and say, right? Have I heard that in the past that?
You can readjust every 2 weeks if you want, you just have to keep holding all these public hearings.
And changing the comprehensive plan.
Right,
like
I would
appendix or
say,
whatever?
decide what you want to do this year, and your advisory committee meets annually. They will look at the growth rate, the building permits, the cost of construction, everything again, and they will either say, nope, let's keep this course. They will recommend to you to keep this course, or, wow, that apocalypse did happen. Wow, this other thing did happen. Change course, change course.
Okay.
So every 5 years legally, you have to do all of this again. Most of my Idaho clients are getting close to a 3-year cycle just because things are changing so rapidly. Like, was this last 3 years indicative, or are we at the end, right? But you should look at it every year. And if I may say, that may have been an era of the past. Many of my clients sort of forgot to do that, and then it's hard.
A lot of work to stay on top of it.
It is. Also, I've recommended that the ordinance have an inflationary index in it this time, tied to the construction cost index, not the CPI, so that we won't have such huge swings.
Does it go down too?
Oh, yeah.
So adjust both directions?
We will adjust both ways,
Okay.
because obviously the construction costs we have in there right now are hopefully not going to be what they are. As they go down, the fees will adjust down as well. It's a method that we've not really used until the last couple of years, where we've realized, I would tell you that a significant part of the increase of your impact fees, you didn't just decide to increase your fees. It's just math. And the math is based on two things. One, you weren't fully considering the total impact of growth on your capital plans in the past. Your CIPs were smaller than they needed to be to address real growth. Two, the old CIP was based on construction costs from 5 years ago. So if we keep the growth the same, but we double the cost per square foot, the fee is going to double. And it's not a policy decision, it's just math.
I see. And also, having a conversation with Brock today, is we kind of identified that in a draft ordinance that was created, or maybe, I don't know where it came from, that we don't really have a true accurate definition in a draft ordinance of what multifamily housing is.
You can work with this lovely man to my left, do whatever you want the definition to be.
Whatever.
You are the man. There is no one behind you.
So, Brock, will you speak to that really quick? That there's such a fluctuating community term, I guess, for condominiums and all,
So
like.
for our discussion, I'm a fan of definitions, because then I don't have to do the scary thing of being, well, I'm going to say it's this, and hopefully someone doesn't feel my decision, and then I don't have people mad at me, and I come up here and you guys slap my hand and are like, come on, Brock. I want to limit those interactions. So multifamily right now is changing. We have new housing products. I don't think the definition of multifamily is what it was 10 years ago. And we need to look at having good definitions so we can interpret any sort of impact fee ordinance that we have, so we're being fair both to our citizens and also the developer. And so there are opportunities to create conflict where I with a developer are disagreeing over, well, that's multifamily. Well, no, it's not. And that's where I get to use our amazing legal counsel to make the best definition that we can given the circumstance.
Okay. And with that, and you brought up something, maybe it was Brad, but the two of you had that conversation about something that I've been fairly interested in, is kind of a meet in the middle approach, because I don't, how do I say this? I don't think it's fair to developers to say, surprise, right? 383% increase on single family homes is fair, right? But we have to pay attention to what's in the best interest of our citizens that are already here, and they're not footing the bill. But at the same time, we have to also pay attention to what's fair, I think. And for those that have already had, my initial discussion was like a preliminary plat approved, these fees are not at all in their plan, right? Whatever the terminology is there. And so I think I learned today, right, from Ann, because this is a proposed greater than 5% increase, we would have to have a separate public hearing on this.
You have to, according to impact fee statute, you're gonna have a fee hearing on any amendment to an ordinance where you charge fees.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, knowing that is coming, I think this audience knows me well enough to know that I don't mind stepping out on a limb. But when that time comes for public comment directly to the council, not through planning and zoning, I would appreciate the comments to be directed at let's meet in the middle approach versus no impact fee at all right now, I can't pay that, or 100% across the board, charge them all, right? I don't think that's the right answer. I'd prefer a meet in the middle. And as an example of that, this is just an example. It's an idea that I've been thinking over for the last several days, kind of ironing it out with some other brains. Is that I think where you are going with this is that I learned that not everybody, Brock, you're going to tell me this, so pay attention here for a sec. Not everybody has to have a preliminary plat for development. Not everybody has to have a final plat for development because of the different development styles. And so what is one thing that applies to every development across the board is a building permit. And so in my mind, I'd like to see something to the effect of if you have an approved building permit by 1 year from now, essentially May 1st, 2023, if you have an approved building permit, this is kind of a multi-stage deal here, so it's kind of hard for me to work through. Approved building permit by May 1st, 2023, and for whatever you got platted or approved, 50% of those structures, I'm just going to call them structures for the developers, 50% of those structures have certificates of occupancy granted by the city by May 1st of 2025. That's a 2-year building cycle. So if greater than 50% of your plan is has a certificate of occupancy, then you get a 50% credit back on the impact fee that you were previously charged. And the reason I want to do that multi-stage approach is to encourage you to get building, right? Because the city needs it. I think we are probably all in. I'm not speaking for them, but we're all in agreement that we need these structures. We have a final plat before us tonight. I'm really excited to have that come. But we've got a whole. I don't know who said it earlier. We've got a whole lot of approved things. Hardly anything's broken ground yet, and so there goes my heart rate again.
I was just gonna say, I don't know CPR, so can you like tone it down?
I just so worked up in these meetings.
Life alerts, right.
Anyways, so I think that multi-stage approach says, sorry, you're gonna pay the 100% right now, and if you have more than half built with occupancy certificates, we'll give you half back. And if you don't have them built in that time frame, then you're going to stick with the charge, the full Monty. Again, this is just an idea, right? And the only reason I say that is because when we do hold a public hearing, I'd like examples of a meet in the middle rather than nothing at all, like no building permit or 100%. I'll leave it at that for now.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
Okay, just kind of thinking through what you just said. I understand what you're saying, but then if we're gonna stick it to them right now at 100%, which is what part of the problem is that it's costing them a lot of money, on top of increased building costs and everything else, then I just don't see how that would benefit them other than get building now, where they're still paying the high costs. So I think if we do more of like a 90-day or a year or October 1st or whatever, if we can come to that solution, if you already have your building permits pulled, you're exempt, and then we're going to move forward. But I think if we pull it out a couple years, then why even increase them?
I think I want to agree with Councilman Garvey a little bit. I like where you're going, but I think if we did it, maybe we don't charge them up front right now, but you do it at C of O. So that way, it gives them a chance to start making, if it's a rental, they can start getting some of that cash flow back into them. You know what I mean? So they can go ahead and build, and once they come for that condition or certificate of occupancy, then they have to pay that fee then. So it allows them to build, get some people into, if it's a rental unit or if they're selling it or whatever, I don't know. But give them some time, and I like that. It tells them to hurry up and get going too. I like some of that plans, some of your plan too. I don't know, 50%, that's a lot to waive.
Just general numbers right now, thinking.
For sure.
Not set in stone.
Right. No, but then you'll always be 50% short, and so that means that the taxpayer will always have to pay 50% of new build. So I pay a lot, I know you all up here pay a lot of tax. I don't want to subsidize, sorry developers, your developments. So that's just my 2 cents.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Gover.
Ann, I have a quick question for you. What would the process look like if we wanted to discuss the Mountain Home Parks Department CIP? Do we just get together as a council? Are we too late?
You do it right now.
Okay. Does anybody have this in front of? They don't have what I have, I don't think. The parks. Would you please? Okay, I think this would be really good to discuss. No, it's the actual CIP.
Everyone should have a copy.
Of projects, page 22.
Yeah.
Is it in my packet? It's page 22.
It's in your packet. It's in that one. It's in the one that we just got.
They should be in there.
No, you want to go page there.
Madam, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Garvey, can I, so confused. Would I be okay to give you a little bit of explanation of how we got to this CIP?
Sure. Please, yeah.
So generally, when you're putting together a CIP that's based on level of service, you define level of service on the number of acres per 1,000. You had X number, I think I wrote it down somewhere. You have a very high level of service in Mountain Home, 8.5 acres per 1,000. If we were to have kept that same amount of acreage as we grew over the next 10 years, you would need to buy and develop 60 acres. And that would have been like $17 million. So not only did that seem excessive in terms of would we want to ask the development community to pay what I calculated, what did I say, it would be like a $6,000 fee. No, I didn't think you were going to want to do that. Also, your advisory committee had some really interesting feedback that they did not feel that the city was at a loss for acreage. They felt you were at a loss for amenities. They also didn't feel that the city, I'm paraphrasing from that meeting, but we're concerned about building and greening up large, 60 acres that have to be watered, that wasn't sustainable or in alignment with your other strategic initiatives. So we went through, we changed and revised and, as a group, with staff and with the committee, this CIP, partially because we didn't want the fee to end up beyond what it is comparably in other communities, but also because that methodology of using acreage as level of service didn't seem true to your community. So instead of a $17 million CIP, this CIP is not about acquiring land, not about planting and irrigating. It's about amenities on your existing parks that will allow for additional people who want additional recreational opportunities, more kids in a playground, more restroom use, etc., those things to be funded. And then the recreation center is a big piece of, here we are this size of city, now it is time to talk about a recreation center. And if you were to do that, growth would pay a third of it, because they're a third of the growth over your next 10 years. And then you'll see the rest of these are smaller. The only thing that's 100% is just the amenities. So out of an $11.5 million CIP, $3.6 million of it is growth related. 7.6 million of it is going to come from the taxpayers' proportional share, or grants, other things that you have.
In council, you have to understand that playground equipment is expensive. It's super expensive, and then when you add on ADA compliance fees, that even, it gets more expensive. And so we didn't, as Ann said, we didn't want to have more green space. We just wanted to add to the amenities that we currently have. Councilman McKean.
I was under the same impression as Becky was to begin with. That's why I brought up when we first brought it, well, couldn't parks be stand to go down a bit? But once found out how much the equipment cost, and that was basically the main thing they're asking for is equipment, it's really tough to cut that one down.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Councilman Brennan.
Paul, question for you. If I remember, you gave us kind of maybe quasi-legal advice that says sorry.
Wow. What did you do?
You said, I think you said, not, like, you can, but not recommended type thing, about collecting impact fees at the time of certificate of occupancy. Like, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's never been my favorite. I mean, that's probably, it's not my favorite. It's not a good time to collect those. It's been, I don't want to bring up the word 2008, it's a dirty word, but it did not turn out well in trying to collect at the end. Is it legally permissible to do so? I understand what you said, quasi-legal. I'm like, yes, you legally can do it at the C of O stage. And then I was like, bad idea. However, it is lawful to do it then.
Councilmember,
But
may I
not
add one
advised.
more piece to that?
Just a sec, yeah. And so, where was I going with that? Certificate of occupancy timing. Oh, he mentioned like a possible downturn in the economy and a recession, and I would agree with that. I think at some point in the near future it's going to happen. I'm not an economist by any means. I got that feeling, And so if that's the case, right, I don't want to be stuck in the 2008 era again, in that we haven't collected impact fees yet. So I'm against that. I think we can incentivize, but I don't want to go that way.
Would we lien those properties, Paul?
For impact fees?
You just
I don't
wouldn't issue a
think so.
building permit.
I mean, it's a permit. It's not a debt. It's a fee.
Right.
An unpaid fee. And so and I don't think so.
So they don't get their certificate of occupancy until it's paid.
Yeah.
Well,
Part of the reason that as a practice that's not shined upon is for whatever amount of time between building permit and C of O, the police and the fire departments are still protecting all of those houses, whether there are people in there or not. And the streets department needs to be acquiring land for the people that are going to be coming. So unless you had like a 90-day, we'll give you 90 days to pull your C of O, and that just gives you a bridge. You could just say don't adopt it for 90 days and get to the same end. Everyone always asks this question and no one ever does it because there may be easier ways to get to the same end.
Well, to me,
There is.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman McCain. You just don't, let's say it's a downturn, they go in bankruptcy, somebody else buys it, they try to get a C of O. Nope, you got to come pay that fee.
True.
Mr. Mayor. Another option you have, and I love the term that was made up, being dynamic, with the way we do our fees, is we do review everything in 1 year. Right now, per our comprehensive plan, the city's greatest need right now is housing. If we break it down, the greatest city's need within that housing is we need some apartments. We could say for 1 year, we will allow apartment type product to be done at C of O. You can be very surgical and very specific for those precise needs that we have. It doesn't have to be an everlasting trend that this is going to be the blanket policy for everything. So you have the ability to be very dynamic.
So does that?
Go ahead, Councilman Brand.
Does that mean that for certain projects we charge it building permit and other projects we charge at certificate of occupancy?
For certain types of projects, yes, for a limited duration of time to meet the city's current pressing needs. That's something that you have the availability to do, and that's what makes impact fees kind of cool, is that you can adjust.
Cool.
But what's the legal implication if we let one person pull a certificate of occupancy and the other guy comes and we say, nope, you're pulling it right now, or you're paying for it at the building permit?
Well, it's the project type, and that's where the definitions and everything else are extremely important.
There is a section in, sorry, I'm playing attorney. I'm a quasi-attorney tonight. And
Evidently it's a good role.
it is. That allows you to exempt or make some ramifications for broad public purpose. So that does allow you to distinguish between different types of built structure, because one is more, rather than, all building at any cost, surgically go to the ones you are most worried about not having in your community because of changes in the market. And you can exempt them, you can give them a phase-in, you can, do whatever you want for that specific, because there's a benefit to all of your current constituents in getting that type of product to market, because no one can afford a house, right? So it gives people, that's a real need in your community, and so giving them some differentiation has been upheld as meeting that broad public purpose language.
Councilman Kane?
Just need a definite definition, so there's no doubt of what a multifamily is versus a duplex, which to me is not a multifamily that we're wanting.
Mayor? Councilman Brennan?
I was thinking the same thing, and if Mayor, if you'd so allow, can we put it on our next agenda for the council to make a ultimate determination, definition of how we want to proceed with the definition of multifamily? So when a public hearing does come before us, if and when a public hearing comes, no matter what, like, we have to have that definition for our EDU discussion too, which is very important. So can we put that on the next agenda for us to determine that definition?
So what I'm hearing from Councilman, you want to move this to the next council meeting?
ultimately, I want our council to have like one action item that says, let's define a multifamily unit, a residential unit.
Okay. So then,
Can we do it now?
Now, I want to make sure the attorney is completely involved with it, he's read it over, he knows exactly what we're trying to say. Trying to do it on the spur of the moment, we're gonna miss
Do a
something.
review with him and with Ham.
okay, so I'm cool with it, yeah, that's great. But so then, are we not doing the deliberation, discussion, planning, zoning commission recommendation amending 20 comprehensive plan include impact fees?
No, I'm not trying to get out of that at all.
No, you want to do it
No,
on
but
the
if
next?
you wanna do it for multiple, might as well take this with that then.
Do it all
We're
in one
looking
night?
at reducing fees for a multifamily.
But we have to publish a public hearing, right, Tiffany? And so that won't be at our next meeting. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying definition first, and then after we publish and can have that meeting, we've got one figured out before we have the next discussion.
Then do you want this in your work session that you guys can figure out, do you want to do 50%? Do you want to do a C of O? Do you want to do multifamily versus single family?
Personally, no. I want to keep just with the EDU discussion only.
Okay.
And I know, like, we will have to have a definition to complete that.
That'll help.
But I think we can make some more progress in our next work session about our EDU thing.
So throw this back up, so are we doing
Well, I'd
anything
just
with
like to
action?
table this until we have a definition and everything
Okay.
else to work, because we're just, right now, we're going round and round. I'll make a motion to table this until we have further definitions of what we actually want to look at.
May I make one recommend, you have a motion on the
Second.
table, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's been motioned, second, any further discussion, Ann?
Yes, may I encourage you not to use the words, giving them a reduced fee, or lowering their fee, or cutting their fee. What you're doing is defining which land uses will be exempted some portion of the fee, which will then be made whole by the general fund.
Which would be workforce housing?
Whatever you decide it is, just know you're not letting, Someone has to pay the whole fee.
So-
The whole fee has to get paid.
Okay, so I have a motion, a second. So then, once you guys figure out what multifamily means, passes the smell test with El Senor Paul here, and then do each council person want to get with Brock too, individually, so you're all in the loop? And then Ann, will you look at it and make sure it passes the smell test for you?
Yeah, and I think you can just circulate it back to the
Is
council.
anyone else needs, we have a question, we can go talk to him.
Okay, okay. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Stokes.
Yes, I think we're all in agreement, growth should pay for itself, but at the same time, I would strongly align with Councilman Brennan that there has to be this meet in the middle standpoint here at some level.
For those that are already in.
Yes, or planning something for the near future, okay? That's it.
And we just call that effective date or implementation. So it really isn't a discussion about what your fees are gonna be. It's a 5% discussion about how you're gonna implement them, much less terrifying.
Well, to me, if you're already in, you better be pulling your building permits today. Hank still here?
That's what we want to incentivize, right?
All right, any further discussion? Sorry, Councilman.
I kind of forgot, this is just for the definition, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilman McCain.
Aye.
Councilman Garvey. Councilman Stokes.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
You'll be on the, yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm not sure what's next on my agenda, I can't see it, but can we,
They've done both items.
Add number 5.
can we talk about approving a public hearing for this, or are we too early in the game?
Paul?
You could talk about when you could put it on a public hearing, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't solve your problems for having to notice it up properly, so that you're only creating a tentative meeting at this point, so there's not much incentive to do that.
Don't need
There's
to.
not.
But you, I mean, you have some unknowns still, that you probably want to iron out first.
This is normal for us to go fix things and come back and get it right before you announce you're having a hearing.
What else needs to be addressed other than a definition? I mean, we're talking about the fee or the implementation date or all of that, but
I would think all of you tossed out different scenarios. I think those are scenarios I can work with legal, I can work with Ann, I can work with Richard or Kitty and show you this is one way to skin it, this is another, and then you can decide what is the best course forward.
Where are we gonna trim the fat off the hog?
Yep.
So, in council, if you guys come to a deciding 2-2 split, I want you guys to know where I'm gonna be standing, right now. I will vote that be C of O, because regardless if a 08 hits, the next person that buys that property, gonna have to come back to the building department for a C of O anyways, and that'll get paid. I don't want the taxpayers having to subsidize, new development. Development should pay for itself. So that's just where I'm gonna be at, so then when you guys work your things out with Brock and Ann and Paul, you know where I'm at. Okay, let's run down to action item number 5, the discussion decision on deliberation decision on planning and zoning commission recommendation to table amending city code title 9 land use development. Okay, we're tabling that one.
You need a motion?
Table it.
Yeah, you'll have to motion to table with the other.
Mr. Mayor, I make motion to table Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation to table amending City Code Title 9 Land Use and Development.
Councilman Brennan.
We're tabling a table. Don't we just approve it? We're approving a recommendation?
Mr. Mayor, I amend my motion to say I approve the table.
It's a legit question, but it says table in there.
Oh, it does.
Because they tabled.
Because planning and zoning tabled it.
Yeah,
Oh,
they tabled it.
Yeah.
P&Z tabled.
So, so we don't want to table their
Table.
table.
Why is it even here if they tabled it?
Yeah, why
Right.
is it even here?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It shouldn't even be here. Just recommendation, though. Right.
Tiffany, you did a really good job getting it out early, though. I appreciate it.
All right, we're just going to jump to item number 6.
I appreciate it. I very much do.
Thank you.
Action item, deliberation decision on planning and zoning commission recommendation for annexation of Thompson Crawl property located at the corner of Airbase Road and Garrett Street and findings of facts. Council members, what do you guys want to do?
I can't even believe it. Let's make sure y'all are paying attention.
Jeez.
He's like
Thank God old Brennan's paying attention here.
All right, council members, what do you guys want to do?
I got paper everywhere.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Can Mr. Cherry just give us a quick 2-second overview of this? And
people want to annex into the city.
There you go. Good job.
That was great. Liked it.
For the purpose of doing drive-through coffee. I'm sorry.
Councilman Brennan.
I'm usually kind of a stickler on annexation, and I think this is a terrible, I'm just kidding. But I think realistically, it's surrounded by the city. Do I have that, am I right? Like, all the way around there, it's city?
Three sides of it anyway. Three sides.
It's not like a leg out there somewhere. And so for that reason, ultimately, I have no problem with squaring up our boundaries and annexing said request, the ground.
Is that a motion?
Make a motion to approve annexation of, I apologize, Airbase Road and Garrett Street.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing now, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilman Kane. Aye. Councilman Stokes. Aye. We'll run down to item number 7, action item, deliberation decision on Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation to zone C4 heavy commercial of Thompson Crawl property located at the corner of Airbase Road and Garrett Street. Findings of facts. Councilman McCain.
Did I hear that this is for a purpose of a coffee shop?
Correct.
Okay, that would be the one to change it to the, from a C4. Okay.
Councilman Brennan.
I just referenced my map back here, which looks like it's actually newer than, I don't know how long ago that got updated, but this is not a spot zone. It is totally contiguous with the zoning around it. It's all C4.
Correct.
Mayor?
Council Brennan.
I make a motion to approve Planning and Zoning's recommendation to zone C4 heavy commercial of the Thomas and Crawl property located at the corner of Airbase Road and Garrett Street.
Second.
Findings of fact.
Second.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes. Aye. Councilman Kane. Aye. Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Run down to number 8, action item, deliberation decision, Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation for annexation of Thompson Crawl property located east of Jerome Street, south of Colthorpe Avenue, and west of Garrett Street, and findings of facts. Council members, what do you guys want to do? Councilman Brennan.
Although the area behind this property is not necessarily contiguous with R4, it does, however, match what's in the county behind it, which would, I think, would be designated in R4, even though we don't designate it. Is that right?
I mean,
We don't designate county land.
Yes, it is residential, so it would abut county residential.
Does county have residential or do they have agriculture? I don't think they have residential.
I can
do
tell you that there is a residential use which is in the county.
Okay.
They have a residential use.
Okay. That's what I meant. Agriculture still has lots of houses on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman Brennan.
Make a motion to approve P&Z's recommendation for annexation of the Thomas and Crawl property located at East Jerome Street, south of Colthorpe Avenue, and west of Garrett Street, and the findings of fact.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Councilman Stokes.
Aye.
Councilman McCain. Aye. Run down to item number 9, action item, deliberation decision on Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation to zone, R4 residential of Thompson Crawl property located east of Jerome Street, south of Colthorpe Avenue, west of Garrett Street, north of Airbase Road, and findings of facts.
Can you read that again? I jumped ahead on the last one. I was talking about zoning, so I got my questions answered already.
All right, is that a motion?
Yeah. Make a motion to approve P&Z's recommendations to zone R4 this property.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman McCain. Aye. Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Councilman Stokes. Aye. Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Not even one no?
Oh, give me a minute.
It's okay, that's comments. Number 10, action item, deliberation decision of Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations to rezone a portion of the land from C4 heavy commercial to R4 residential of Thomas and Carl property located east of Jerome Street, south of Colthorpe Avenue, west of Garrett Street, and findings of facts.
Mayor,
Councilman Brennan.
can you demonstrate for us what property you want to rezone? I saw zoning and annexation, but what do you want to rezone?
Do you have a map?
I was gonna say, we need a map. I have the same question.
It's on the report.
Was it?
Because I remember. Is it in here?
I think they do this as well.
Are there all the staff reports?
Your staff reports. No, that's Turner House.
That one?
That's fair.
Right here.
It's this little one.
Oh, it's a little one?
I have one.
No.
It's the back piece.
Mr. Mayor, if I just may summarize in 20 seconds.
You bet.
15. 10. So what you have is a very messy situation. What we've done is we've allowed them to annex into the city with the front part being C4 and the rear part being R4 residential. Ultimately, that is what we are doing with all of these actions.
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan.
This little area is currently city limits, and so this is strictly a rezone for this section.
Yes.
Keeping it within city limits.
Yes, and we also had to do some property boundary adjustments in order to get the proper form as well. So I can see how that is confusing, but I can promise you the front part is intended to be C4 commercial with the rear being residential.
And this portion in question right now is, what item are we on, 10?
10.
Strictly zoning for commercial.
I think that was a C4.
This is
piece.
C4.
Some of the back part's C4.
So we had a rezone.
Just this, there's a
That
sliver.
sliver.
This is a crummy
sliver
map,
that
but
borders the dealership
On the back side of the dealership?
Yeah, where the fence is right
is
along.
currently C4, and it's maybe a 20. Yeah, it's a very small strip, like
and then it
maybe
goes to right there.
20 feet.
Okay.
I think you can see it from that though, but it's that little triangle.
We need the map you showed us the other day, or you showed me the other day. That would be a lot more helpful.
So the stuff behind the dealership you want to be zoned commercial?
No.
No, that's
Where am I?
It is C4.
Oh, from C4 though. I didn't read far enough.
Yeah.
That makes it way easier. Thanks, Tiffany. I thought that was backwards. Just gotta read. Yeah.
Councilman Brennan.
Make a motion to approve P and Z's recommendation to rezone that strangely shaped section of land from C4 to R4.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman McCain? Aye. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Run down to items from number 11, action on deliberation decision on Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation for conditional use permit for a drive-up window of Thomas and Carl property located at the corner of Air Base Road, Garrett Street, and findings of facts.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Stokes.
Mr. Chair, they're gonna intend to serve coffee out of this window, yes?
Yes, sir, and I believe that they have the appropriate stacking needed in order not to impede public right of way.
Great. Do they have an exit on the Air Base Road that's perfect for traffic flow and stuff?
Yes, they do. And note that they will just have to meet any standard per IDD.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I make
The one you said we get to vote no on.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Have you been assessed an extra EDU for your drive-up window?
I have not been assessed any use because I haven't pulled a building permit yet.
Okay.
Start that conversation.
Got my note.
Conversation. It's not on the agenda.
We're gonna finish that discussion soon someday, I hope. Soon and someday. Finish it?
Councilman Stokes, did you have some?
I want to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Please.
I'd like you to make a motion to approve Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation for a conditional use permit for a drive-up window of Thomas and Carl property located at the corner of Airways Road and Garrett Street and findings of facts.
Second. The motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes? Aye. Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
We're down to item number 12, action on deliberation decision to approve Turner House Depot subdivision final plat. Councilman Brennan?
I think what we all bargained for is what we're getting. I haven't seen any kind of substantial change on this. Unless there's further discussion, I just make an immediate motion to approve Turner House Depot subdivision final plat.
Second, go ahead.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing now, I'll call for the question. Councilman McKean?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes? Aye. Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
As long as they break ground quickly.
Alrighty, recognized personality. Would somebody like to get down and speak for 3 minutes? Rusty, come on down.
Up for that in a minute. Rusty Fairclough, 2280 North 5th East here in Mountain Home. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for the time and allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. Let me start off by saying I have been a supporter for most of the projects within the city during the last few years. Now on to why I'm here tonight. Hopefully you received my email last week in regards to an article that was published in the Idaho Press Tribune and on KTVB News. Let me get straight to the point. Is this the city of Brock Cherry, or is this the city of the citizens of Mountain Home? During the interview, Brock stated, as the area grows, he is trying to do something different. His plan involves higher density residents, commercial and industry, and a lower percentage of single-family homes compared to some cities in the Treasure Valley. Myself, along with many citizens, came before Planning and Zoning and City Council just a few months back, and we expressed our concern over high-density residents, in particular to the Thunderbolt Landing project, and the fact that it was being targeted for high-density housing. Thankfully, the City Council heard our concerns and reduced that number, and now Brock is saying the city wants higher density housing and a lower percentage of single-family homes. Are we going to let Brock continue with his dream of a community of apartment complexes, condos, and townhomes?
Rusty?
Or is the mayor?
Can I interrupt you real quick?
You bet, sir.
Mayor, is that okay?
Go ahead.
Rusty, I'm just going to say, this sounds like it's a complaint against one of our employees. Can we go into executive session to talk about this? I don't think complaints need to be.
Okay, then I'll say City Council as he was speaking, I suppose, for the City Council.
No, he wasn't speaking for the city or city, but I'm going to let him talk about those. So go ahead, Rusty, finish up.
Brock was quoted in the article as saying essentially most single-family homes don't generate enough tax revenue to pay for the services they receive. Really? Please tell me, with the $3,257 I paid in property taxes for 2021, what services did I not pay for that I received? How much does my property taxes have to pay for the services I receive or should be receiving? He was also quoted, however, one limiting factor may be water availability. He said the city is working on solutions, but the biggest conversation centers on possibly altering how agricultural operations utilize water. Last time I looked around the city, there aren't many agricultural operations, but there is a lot of watering of our city parks. Are we going to tell our farmers who are already struggling in the city, who are already struggling, that the city of Mountain Home is looking at altering how they're using water? Mayor, City Council, I hope this is one person just trying to, I'll skip that. Thank you for your time and stand for any questions.
So Rusty, I would behoove you to talk to Brock. As I can attest that, and we're not supposed to engage, but I'm going to engage just because you're here. Articles and papers and are misconstrued. If I say, hey, yeah, the city's going left, they print in the article that the city was going right and up. It's one of those things where his vernacular sometimes we're taken out of context. I've had this discussion with Brock, and I think probably some of the council here have had that same conversation. But you have to give other opportunities or other, it's not just not single family homes, it's everything. You need to have a little bit of everything. And I think that's what
I agree there, but to say we need fewer single-family homes and that I'm not paying enough taxes, or the single-family home doesn't pay enough taxes for the services they get.
Well, I want to know why you only got paid. Would you pay $3,300? I paid almost $6,500. What the heck?
That's because you're living next to Becky. You guys are living on that side of the street. I'm on this side of the street.
Well, trust me, Brock is doing is best he can with what we've given him. The problem is right now we have nothing for anybody, and you know, I'll let you speak if you want, Brock. If not, you guys want to go in your room and talk about it. It's totally up to you.
I would just invite anyone who has read that article. Like you said, there was, it was like an hour and a half interview with a lot of context before certain statements. The city of Brock Cherry, they don't pay me enough for this to be the city of Brock Cherry. I've been here 2 years. I feel like I've aged 5. I'm grayer. I'm fatter. But I can tell you.
I'm aboard.
But I can tell you my only best interest is to make sure the city of Mountain Home is someplace where everyone can prosper, where kids who grew up here can live here, and that we can add value. And I invite anyone in my office to have those conversations. I'm not a perfect person. I'm sorry if certain statements upset you, but I'm here to find solutions, and my door is always open.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to give Mr. Cherry a little bit of advice. Controlling the narrative can be difficult in interviews. If you are the first author of an article, you control the entire narrative.
Well, Betsy and I have sat down with Airpro. I think I talked to Becky a little bit about it too, or Mrs. Garvey, Councilwoman Garvey, sorry, about the narrative. That's the hard part, is when they come at you, it's like, hey, what's your thoughts on green grass? You like it? And you're like, oh, I love green grass. Then next thing you know, he's wanting to put grass entire everybody's lawns and all that.
I didn't say that.
Instead of dryscaping. So those are just kind of the things. So I get with Brock. He has definitely the best interest of the city of Mountain Home at heart. So.
Just came in a wrong time when we were talking about Thunderbolt Landing.
Right.
We argued that fact, and then I'm hearing just what we agreed upon there. We're going the total opposite direction again. So it was very frustrating to see that article.
Okay.
Yeah. We know Brock's opinion. I mean, we know how things.
Would anybody else like to get up for 3 minutes? I want to tell the council, thank you for the LID. Going forward here, moving forward, letting Mountain Home decide what it really wants. Let Mountain Home be competitive in the global market in the state of Idaho. That will keep us competitive. It'll keep hopefully our kids and hopefully it'll get more development here. First thing, Brock will tell you a lot of you got gig speeds here for me. Yeah, maybe. So I appreciate you guys for voting that in. So here moving forward, we will definitely Rich and I'll bring a kind of a synopsis here here in a couple weeks or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, of something kind of futuristic for Public Works. So with your ARPA funds. So, all right. Anything else? Mr. Mayor, Councilman Stokes.
Hey, I want to say thanks to you for leading the fiber thing. I mean, you didn't have to convince us and have them work to convince us. And that's how government works. So sometimes it's slow, but the right decision was made. So thanks.
Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned.